Oh, yeah. Jennifer, let me know when we're ready. I got a green light, but I don't know if she's ready. Okay, very good. Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Edina City Council meeting. It is May 2nd, 2023. Here we go. I think spring has arrived. It is 7:02 p.m. and just a reminder, a follow-up to Director Benarott, if you're watching the meeting on cable TV or at edinamn.gov live meetings or on facebook.com/edinamn, you're going to be able to participate a couple of different times in the meeting this evening remotely, and that's either in community comment or during the one public hearing matter that we have. So we're going to show that number up on the screen again. That you can call in, and especially if you're interested in community comment, it's going to come up fairly quickly on the agenda, so make sure you write this number down and the conference PIN number, and you're going to press *1 to speak to an operator, and the operator will bring in the Director Benarott to speak to the City Council. And remember, again, just a reminder, when you call in for community comment, you can't comment on something that's on the agenda this evening or scheduled for a future public hearing. So we're pleased to be able to continue to provide these meetings in both a live and hybrid sort of way or a remote way. And with that information being provided, I'm going to call the meeting to order, and I'm going to ask our clerk, Sharon Allison, to call the roll.
Councilmember Agnew? Here. Councilmember Jackson? Here. Councilmember Pierce?
Here.
Councilmember Risser? Here. Mayor Hovland?
Here. Next is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, everybody. And next we have the meeting agenda. Because we have so many items on the special recognitions and presentations portion of the agenda, there's one item that we want to move off the consent agenda, and that is item 6L. I'm going to make that 9C, which slightly modifies the meeting agenda. So with that change being made to the meeting agenda, is there a motion by a council member to adopt the amended meeting agenda, which moves item 6L to item 9C?
So moved.
A second.
Member Risser moves. Member Agnew seconds. The motion is stated. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adopting the amended agenda as stated, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. And now we are going to move on to community comment, and we'll get that number back up there. Folks, if you want to call in, you have that number in mind and that conference ID number. But first, we're going to turn to our fellow residents that may be in the audience that wish to speak to the council about a matter of concern to them. So I'm going to move first to the city council chambers and see if there's anyone who wishes to address the council on a matter of concern to them that's not on the agenda this evening or scheduled for a future public hearing. All right, not seeing anybody coming forward. Spring has hit everybody. They want to be outside, not inside. Director Benarott.
I don't have any callers yet either,
right,
but
yeah.
I think we should wait a minute. That gives people who are watching online a chance to dial in since there's a slight delay in the broadcast. My clock shows it at 7:05, so if that works for you, I will come back to you at 7:06 or when I have a caller, whichever is first.
All right, that's good advice. We'll wait for you.
It is now 7:06, and I still don't have a caller, so I think it's safe for you to move forward with your agenda.
Very good, thank you. That concludes the community comment portion of the meeting agenda for this May 2nd, 2023. As is our practice and as required by the agenda, the next matter is the city manager's response to community comments that were made in the prior meeting. And Manager Neal, as I recall, there were some that you needed to address, and I'll turn now to you for those responses to community comments from the prior meeting.
Thank you, Your Honor. Yes, there were two comments at community comment last time that I can respond to. One was from Mr. Andy Brown, and his concern was the pending merger or the possible merger between Fairview Health Systems and Sanford Health, and really encouraging the city to take a position against the merger and to make that position clear to all those involved. And that is something we could do. The merger is not complete. They have pushed back the date of sort of the final approval for it a couple of times, and now it's extended at least till the end of May. So if there was interest on this issue from council, we could act on it at your May 18th council meeting. But certainly we have an interest in it. You and I have, Mr. Mayor, have had some conversations with some of the principals involved to let them know that we're interested and that we know it's important to the community. They're our largest employer. They're a key employer in town in terms of this kind of the medical spin-off that comes from that organization as well. They do have some issues, and there's a lot of eyes on this at the state level. But if this is something council wants to take a position on, we can do that at our next meeting on the 18th.
All right.
The other item was from Janie Weston, and she had some concerns about zoning issues, and Carrie and I, Mr. Teague and I had a chance to talk with our city attorney, and we've come up with this sort of response. Multifamily residential uses are conditionally permitted use in the PCD zoning districts. Conditional use permits for multifamily residential projects have been approved by the City Council, including recent projects at the View 44 Apartments and Edina Flats, including 4404 Valley View Road site. But we agree there's some ambiguity at the least with regards to this part of our zoning code. We are discussing that with our city attorney right now and intend to create and bring an amendment to clarify that issue through our Planning Commission City Council this summer.
All right, very good. With respect to the first issue that you addressed that Resident Andy Brown raised about the Fairview-Sanford potential merger, and do we wish to opine on the same? I think maybe we could talk about that briefly when we get to the end of the meeting on mayor and council comments and see if we want to give you any further direction on that at that point in time.
That's all I've got.
All right, good, thank you. Next portion of the agenda deals with adoption of the consent agenda items in a single motion with the exception of 6L, which was moved to 9C. Does anyone on the council wish to remove any other item on the consent agenda for further discussion? Hearing nothing, is there a motion to adopt the items on the consent agenda, portion of the agenda, in a single motion with the exception of 6L?
So moved.
Second.
Member Jackson moves, Member Pierce seconds the adoption of the items on the consent agenda with the exception of item 6L. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of the motion as stated say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. And then we are on to special recognitions and presentations. And it is really a pleasure in this beautiful spring evening to have our Hennepin County Commissioner Chris Latondras here to give us an update on the things that they've been working on at Hennepin County. And he is everywhere in our district, I would say, working on things in a nonstop sort of way, wonderful ideas, very thoughtful interactions with people. He's just been doing a terrific job for us representing District 6, and so welcome, Commissioner.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, for those very kind and overly generous words. Good evening, Council. Really happy to be with you here and for welcoming me here tonight to provide my annual Hennepin County update. I do have a presentation we sent in advance. Does somebody have that all queued up? Hopefully. I can get started here while we cue that up, though. My name is Chris Latondras. I'm your Hennepin County Commissioner representing District 6, which includes my hometown of Hopkins, City of Edina, Minnetonka, Eden Prairie, and 12 cities around Lake Minnetonka. When I tell folks that I am their commissioner, the most common question that I get is, what's a commissioner? And I get it. Hennepin County often flies under the radar, at least for some of our residents. But we are actually Minnesota's second largest government, second only to the state, and the largest local unit of government, which includes our cities, our school districts, and Minnesota's 87 counties. It looks like we've got that queued up now. You wouldn't mind progressing to... Oh, you have... I can just do it myself. Great. So that's a map of District 6 right there. Our board, and there are 7 of us commissioners, functions much like this council. Together we steward a $2.7 billion annual budget across a broad range of topics that you can see listed here on the expenses side. Human services, public health, public safety, public works, resident services. That includes our libraries, a topic that's going to come up later tonight, in our elections. Through our HRA, we steward considerable investments in housing and economic development, and we do this on behalf of the 1.26 million residents. That's 1 in 5 Minnesotans who call Hennepin County home. It is a very big responsibility, and if there's one thing that I've learned serving our shared residents, it's that really none of this is possible. The only way any of this is possible is through really strong partnerships. And I promise to do my part to ensure that the partnership between Hennepin County and the City of Edina remains strong for years to come. And so my goal tonight is to offer a brief snapshot of what your county government has been up to since we last connected about a year ago on a few key topics. We're going to talk about housing, public safety, mental health, our economic recovery, and I want to make myself available at the end for your questions. So we'll jump in first with an update on housing stability. In our region, as we sit here right now, we face an intersecting crisis of homelessness and affordable housing that has surged with the sunset of the federal eviction moratorium and the end of pandemic emergency rental assistance dollars. 1 in 3 Hennepin County families are housing cost burdened, which means they spend more than a third of their household income on their housing, their rent or their mortgage. And to me, this is one of the more sobering statistics. Family homelessness has more than doubled since the beginning of the pandemic. We are having to totally re-baseline our assumptions in Hennepin County around what family homelessness looks like. And that working definition is a parent and a child who calls and says they need a place to sleep because they don't have one. You don't have to look far to understand why. There are 73,000 extremely low-income households in Hennepin County. That's 30% area median income and below, and fewer than 15,000 units affordable at that level to them. It is a startling gap that directly corresponds to this surge in homelessness. It's why Hennepin County invests more than $146 million annually across a whole continuum of resident housing needs, from homeless shelters at one end of the continuum to affordable homeownership opportunities and everything in between, deeply affordable and supportive housing, workforce housing, homeownership. And with the American Rescue Plan, we have gone big on housing stability as one of our largest single area of investments. It's garnered national attention, including from U.S. Housing and Urban Development Secretary Marcia Fudge, who in a recent meeting with us in Washington, D.C. for the National Association of Counties meeting, not only praised the scale of Hennepin County's investments in housing, but our innovation. In particular, she spotlighted the conversion of hotels into single-room homes, and a Vivo Village, which is the first tiny indoor housing village anywhere in the nation. There's a lot more work for us to do together, but you can be proud to live in a county that is looked to as a national leader on housing. And just quickly before we move on, I just wanted to highlight some of these recent housing investments right here in District 6, including a few that Hennepin dollars are in right here in Edina. I won't go into these, but if you have questions about any of these, I can do my best to answer them. Next topic, public safety. As Vice Chair of Hennepin's Law, Safety, and Justice Committee, public safety remains one of my top priorities. I am in frequent conversations with our chiefs. Chief Milburn, it's good to see you. Our new sheriff, DeWanna Witt, and I continue to listen and learn from our officers and other first responders on the front lines through regular ride-alongs. You can see one of the photos there with Officer Jepson. I think that was about this time last year that we went out together. With a workforce shortage that is affecting all of our departments and increased pressures to serve residents with mental and behavioral health challenges, it is critical that we get these public servants the resources and support that they need to do their jobs with fidelity and excellence. That's why we approved the Sheriff Office request a couple of years ago for 31 new deputies, though I'll say in the context of this workforce shortage, they have not yet filled those. It's also why we approved $8.2 million to expand the North Metro Public Safety Training Facility in Maple Grove. It's a training facility in particular for our deputies, but other local law enforcement jurisdictions as well. Broke ground last year. It's now operational, and I think we have the ribbon cutting on that coming up here in a couple of weeks. Next slide. It's also why we've moved with some urgency to expand one of the most promising public safety initiatives I believe in our nation, which is our embedded social worker partnership with local law enforcement. What started as a pilot in 2019 with 5 social workers in 6 departments, including Edina, has now expanded to 45 workers covering every single city and every single department in Hennepin County, and obviously that includes the Edina Police Department. It's a model that not only better meets the needs of residents in crisis, it frees up our police to do critical police work, and I think it makes all of us more safe, and is a model of good government in action. While we're on this adjacent topic of mental and behavioral health, I am proud to report that your county is also making big strides in addressing the mental health needs of our students. According to the CDC, more than 4 in 10 students feel persistently sad or hopeless, and 1 in 3 experience poor mental health. It's a painful trend that has only gotten worse as a result of the pandemic. Through Hennepin County's school-based mental health partnerships with our public schools, Hennepin County is now providing services to more than 6,600 students. And as of this year, 2023, we have expanded these services to every single district, every single school countywide. It's a key policy priority that I have championed and my colleagues have supported. In the midst of this crisis of loneliness and social disconnection, our students and young people need to know that somebody cares about them. And I'm grateful for the partnerships that make this work possible, including, I might add, Mayor Hovland, thank you for your participation in our West Metro Youth Summit on Social Disconnection this past month, where this topic of loneliness and social disconnection was the topic. Our third and final primary spotlight for the evening, full economic recovery means supporting our small businesses, the backbone of our community. During the pandemic, Hennepin County provided nearly $70 million in recovery grants to small businesses, including 232 grants of $2.6 million to businesses here in Edina, and over $9.5 million across District 6. But we don't think our responsibility ends here. In fact, it's just beginning with these new ways of working with our small business community that came about as a result of the pandemic. It's why we've launched Elevate Hennepin. It's a resource hub connecting local entrepreneurs to expert advisors at no cost on a wide range of topics that you can see listed here. And folks can visit elevatehennepin.org to learn more. This is just one piece of a broader strategy that we are growing to support entrepreneurs and businesses at every stage, including through a range of additional programs you can see here. To date, over 2,300 businesses have engaged these services, and more than 1,400 have accessed over 9,500 hours of free one-on-one advising. So whether you have a new idea that you're looking to scale, or you are a multi-million-dollar business, you're a CEO that's looking to network with a cohort of your peers, we are here to meet you where you are at and help you thrive. Again, I think that's good government in action. 2 more really quick things before I turn things back over to you, Mayor Hovland. First, for your reference, our Public Works team wanted me to include a list of current and future public works projects here in Edina. Some of these involve partnership, and I won't go through them, but I wanted to personally extend my thanks to the city for your partnership that makes these these projects go. And perhaps best for last, I think Steve Jobs always used to say, one more thing. This is that in this presentation. I am thrilled to report publicly on a forum like this for the first time that we are officially moving forward with plans for the new Southdale Library. Our goal is to break ground in 2025, open in 2026, and engage in a very robust community engagement process for the better part of this year, really extending until we have those plans finalized and in place. There's a QR code here. We want to hear from residents for their views on the future of this library. You're welcome to circulate that. We can also send a link to council if you want to put that in a future newsletter or something like that. I know this has been a really long time coming, long before I served in this role. It surprises some, but even in its current condition, the current Southdale Library is actually the 4th largest, highest visited library in the county. I want to make sure that the new Southdale Library really sets a new national gold standard for what our libraries can be, just like the Southdale Library did 50 years ago when it was first built. And it matters because we know that our libraries are more than just buildings. They are really beacons of learning. They are hubs for community connection and civic engagement, and really important for our democracy. So I just want to thank the City of Edina for your partnership on this. This is going to be a very live topic between Hennepin County and Edina in the years ahead, and especially Councilmember Jackson, just a recognition of your leadership on our capital budgeting task force, where these investments on Hennepin side will originate when we finally make them. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I'll turn things back over to you.
Idea of and I'm sure our residents are as well, the idea of a new library on the existing site.
That's right.
At 70th and York. And there are some possibilities with what else might go with it from a city standpoint, but we're going to work on that together. I'm sure some of my colleagues may have some questions or comments that they'd wish to make with regard to your report out. Thoughts? Anybody? Commissioner? Yeah, Member Jackson?
So thank you, Commissioner. This is wonderful, and thank you for the opportunity to serve on the Capital Budget Task Force. It's a real honor. So one of the questions I had is you talked about working with the youth and the mental health. Are there other, is it a fairly broad initiative that the county is working on, and that's one that you're particularly focused on? Can you just briefly say how big in scope that project is?
Yeah, well, the county has a wide range of youth-focused initiatives. This is just one. I could be here all night going through all our departments and all the activities we have underway. I think of particular interest has been this topic of school-based student mental health, and I wanted to highlight it just because this year really does represent a milestone around the county's commitment to this issue with our full funding of that to expand it to every school.
Terrific. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Just a couple of things. So thank you again for the presentation. I do love the Southdale Library. I'm there 3 or 4 times in the month, and it's just funny to me, a library is the last place in America that's quiet. So if you just want focus and quiet time, you got to go to a library. So I definitely enjoy and I'm excited to hear that we're moving forward and breaking ground relatively soon. 2025 is... Yeah, I think
we're
that's
eager to
very
move
aggressive.
quickly on it. We're not going to let any grass grow.
That's awesome. And so the only question that I had, you went through 2 areas, and I feel like you were fairly comprehensive in how you're tackling the challenges of homelessness across the county. You ended with entrepreneurship. And so the question that I have is on the escalation of just what, in my opinion, is senseless acts of violence. As we see that escalation nationwide, what are we doing to change that trajectory across the county?
Yeah, it's a really great and timely question. I mean, and it's complex because it requires system partners at every single level to do the work. But for our part in Hennepin County, we, as county government, our primary lane that we occupy is on human services. So we try to go upstream and improve prospects for our residents, our young people, particularly our justice-involved youth. Our Department of Law, Safety, and Justice, we also sort of have a unique role in that we operate the jail, we operate the JDC, that's our juvenile detention center. So if a young person is faced with an arrest and taken there, depending on the severity of the crime, they might be held there for a time, or we might have to release them, but that's a component of it too. But you know, the county attorney is involved, local law enforcement's involved, the justice system itself is involved, the judges. I mean, at every level, we all have a role to play in addressing this. I'll say for my part, one thing that I've been really motivated to tackle, and I think part of this comes from my background as a school board member before I was on the county board, has been to really focus on upstream prospects for youth, in particular youth that we have some current interaction with the justice system or might be most at risk of having interactions with the justice system. This is part of the conversations I've been having with Mayor Hovland, but I hope to extend to council here in the next year. One of my resolutions that I brought forward during budget season last year as commissioner last fall was to stand up a Hennepin County funding commitment for establishing what I'm calling a West Metro Youth Collaborative that would be modeled on the Brooklyn Bridge Alliance for Youth in North Suburban Hennepin. It would be a partnership between the county, a few select West Metro cities, school districts, and I've been in conversation with the City of Edina schools about this initiative, and I think we hope to kick off some planning discussions about that this summer. So,
Thank you.
Good. Other questions, comments? Member Risser?
Just a comment. Thank you for coming. We appreciate your time, and I had no idea there was a elevatehennepin.org, so good to hear about that, and I will check out that website.
yeah, that's part of why these council updates are fun. Is that, again, there's just so much happening at the county. We get to just offer little short commercials around what's happening here. But if you want any more information on that or to be connected to our economic development team, I'm happy to do that. So.
Okay, very good. Well, thanks for being here with us.
Yeah, thanks so much,
this
Mr.
evening.
Mayor.
Appreciate
Council.
the annual update. And then I've got one other issue I'll shoot you an email on.
Great, sounds good.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, the next two matters involve our Edina PD and National Police Week, and our Chief of Police, Todd Milburn, is going to be handling the bulk of these matters. But the first item that we're going to deal with is the proclamation involving National Police Week. And I think folks in our community know that every year in conjunction with National Police Week, we have a flag-raising ceremony. And I think the chief will touch on that as to what day that is. The 17th of May, as I recall, 8:30 or 9 in the morning.
Correct.
Folks wanted to come. It's a public event. You're sure welcome to come over here, and we'll do the flag raising event right here at City Hall. So I'm going to read the proclamation involving National Police Week, May 14th through the 20th, 23, and then the chief is going to accept the proclamation. And then we also got, as we do annually, a really exciting event following this proclamation, and that is designating the Edina Crime Prevention Fund Mike Satari Officer of the Year Award. And we've got a terrific awardee and family here to share it. Everybody in the family, I think, yeah. All right, here's the proclamation. Whereas the week of May 14th through 2023 is National Police Week in the United States. And whereas there are more than 800,000 law enforcement officers serving in communities across the United States, including the dedicated members of the Edina Police Department. And whereas nearly 44,000 assaults against law enforcement officers were reported in 2021, resulting in approximately 15,369 injuries. And whereas since the first recorded death in 1791, over 23,000 law enforcement officers in the United States have made the ultimate sacrifice and been killed in the line of duty. And whereas the names of those dedicated public servants are engraved on the walls of the National Law Enforcement Memorial in Washington, D.C., and whereas 556 new names of fallen heroes are being added to the National Law Enforcement Memorial this spring. And whereas the service and sacrifice of all officers killed in the line of duty will be honored during the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund's 35th Annual Candlelight Vigil to be held on May 13th, 2023. And whereas the Candlelight Vigil is part of National Police Week, which takes place this year on May 14 through the 2023. And whereas May 15th is designated as Peace Officers Memorial Day in honor of all the fallen officers and their families, and U.S. flags should be flown at half-staff on that day. And now, therefore, the City Council of the City of Edina does hereby proclaim May 14th through May 20th, 2023, as National Police Week in the City of Edina, Minnesota, and calls upon the people of Edina to observe this week in honor of those whose diligence and professionalism keep the residents and City of Edina safe. Is there a motion to adopt the proclamation?
So moved.
Member Agnew moves.
Seconded.
Member Risser seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of the proclamation say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. I'm going to take this down and hand it to the chief, and the chief has a few remarks, and then we'll move on. Next item.
I'm sorry. I'm like right in the sun, and so that's why I'm moving toward you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. I'm Chief Milburn, and on behalf of the men and women serving for the community of Edina, we want to thank you for this proclamation. We ask that people remember these fallen officers as someone's child, brother, sister, mother, or father. Law enforcement work has never been more difficult and challenging. It is important to know that our officers will continue to respond to these challenges with compassion, integrity, and care for the community. We work for the best department and community in the state, and we are fortunate to serve in this community. Locally, May 14th is Law Enforcement Day. Beginning 6 p.m. on the 14th, officers will stand guard at the Minnesota Law Enforcement Memorial Site in St. Paul for 24 hours. That will lead into a remembrance ceremony at 7 p.m. on the 15th. All are welcome to attend. We also want to point out, Mayor, as you've already indicated, that on the 17th we will have our own flag raising ceremony here, and all are welcome to attend that as well. That'll start at 9 a.m. So with that, I want to thank everyone here for this proclamation and this opportunity. Thank you very much. We do appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Chief. That's an important proclamation to have every year, and we just can't begin. I really appreciate the fact that there are so many officers and people associated with our public safety operation here in the chambers this evening, because it gives us a chance to tell you how important we think you are to us and our residents of our community, and how much we support the work that you do. So we're going to recognize one of your colleagues, one of your fellow officers, and I'm going to turn it now back over to the chief to talk about the officer who is receiving this award this year, the Mike Satari Officer of the Year Award, and then we're going to celebrate that person momentarily. So, Chief, back to you.
Very good. Thank you, Mayor. Council members, just a little bit of background here for everyone in terms of why we're here tonight. So for more than 45 years, the Edina Crime Prevention Fund has supported and provided funds to the police department as a community partner. The Crime Prevention Fund has presented an award called the Mike Satari Award of the Officer of the Year Award annually since 2011 to recognize exceptional officers deserving of special recognition. The award is named after Mike Satari, who served as police chief from 1999 to 2009 during his 31-year tenure with the Edina Police Department. The Edina Crime Prevention Fund has presented this award annually, recognizing officers who have gone above and beyond the call of duty on their job. Nominations were made by staff for officers who demonstrate this exceptional service and are reviewed by newly established awards recognition committee members with the Edina Police Department, as well as the Edina Crime Fund. I want to thank the Edina Crime Fund for their support in making this award possible. Jesse, if you could come up. We changed this up just a little bit because we thought we'd be a little clever here and put a quick video together and then just share a little bit of background about Jesse here as an introductory piece, and then I'll come back and read off some more comments.
All right. Thanks, Chief.
I started as a community service officer in 2016, and I got hired on full-time as a patrol officer in 2017. I think my motivation goes with most of the officers here. It's just to help other people. Many times get called to people's worst days. So if we can shed light or help people in those situations, I think that's what internally motivates me. I think that we have great support from our community within Edina. That's one thing that I enjoy working here. We get tons of support from the residents, whether that's, them coming in or just driving by, them waving to us. I would want people to know that after this badge and this uniform comes off, we're the same people that, we could be your neighbor.
That's Jesse in a nutshell, but to expand on that a little bit more, Jesse is our 13th recipient of the Officer of the Year Award for 2022. Jesse began his career in the Edina Police Department as a community service officer in July of 2016. Once he became post-certified, Edina was lucky to hire him as an officer in November of 2017. Jesse has displayed a high level of dedication to training and development of not just himself, but others in the Edina Police Department. Jesse is currently a field training officer, a firearms instructor, use of force and defensive tactics instructor, and a member of the Edina SWAT team. Jesse makes information readily available and easily understandable to other officers, and he pushes officers to their fullest potential. Jesse strives to make every officer the best version of themselves, whether a brand new officer or veteran officer. Jesse never hesitated to help out if a patrol shift needed an extra officer to come in, no matter if it was day shift or night shift. Jesse shows up to work with a smile on his face and the ability to motivate everyone in the room. Jesse is a natural leader, and his peers often feel comfortable coming to him with questions or for assistance. Jesse is one of the most proactive officers with the Edina Police Department. Jesse has a passion for traffic and DWI enforcement, which is evident in every shift. Jesse's partners were often motivated by Jesse's proactivity and would follow his lead to take impaired drivers off of our roads. Another passion of Jesse's is working on the SWAT team. Jesse joined the SWAT team in 2020 and was selected as one of the 2 snipers in 2021. Jesse has attended countless trainings with not just Edina SWAT team, but members of our 5-city SWAT consortium as well. Jesse holds the protection and safety of victims, other officers, and even suspects with high regard and works seamlessly with other operators for successful resolution of incidents. Lastly, I would like to mention one incident of note that occurred in October 2022. Jesse and other officers were dispatched to a local bank regarding some suspicious activity that occurred overnight. A witness observed an individual hooking up an ATM machine with large chains, and he called the police. The individual was observed holding a large sledgehammer and hitting the ATM with it. Jesse was quick to respond to the area and was the first officer to arrive. Jesse observed the lone suspect begin fleeing from him on foot while he was carrying the sledgehammer as well as a large crowbar. Jesse gave chase to the suspect on foot and quickly apprehended him after the suspect resisted arrest. The suspect in this case used a stolen pickup truck to uproot the ATM from its mount. The suspect then tried to gain access to the ATM with a crowbar and sledgehammer, but was unsuccessful due to Jesse's quick response and quick feet, it sounds like here as well. The suspect later confessed to Jesse that he had stolen the pickup truck earlier in the night with the intent to steal all the money out of the ATM. Jesse's dedication to the Edina Police Department and citizens of Edina, exemplary police work, and displays of leadership make him deserving of this distinguished award. I would like to present Jesse with our 2002 Officer of the Year Award, and please join me in congratulating Jesse as their 2022 Mike Satari Officer of the Year. And Jesse would like to make a couple quick comments for all of you as well.
All right, good. And then we'll do a few photographs too.
Perfect. All right. I want to start out by giving a few thank yous that are well deserved. I want to first say thank you to everyone for taking the time out of their schedules to be here tonight. I want to thank the Crime Prevention Fund for their continued support and for creating this award to recognize great efforts within our agency. I want to thank my parents and my in-laws for always picking up my slack and being there for my wife when I'm away from home. Last but not least, I want to thank my wife Jordan for understanding everything that comes with being a spouse of a police officer. This is the best job in the world, but it comes with a heavy cost. The cost of hectic schedules, multiple training days, missed holidays, and 3 a.m. call-outs, to name a few. Thank you for understanding it all and being there for me through the thick of it. A couple weeks ago, I was up north at the family cabin on leave with my wife and our newborn baby. I received a phone call and looked at the phone to see that it was Chief Milburn calling me. For those of you who don't know, this is not a common occurrence or a phone call that I'm used to getting. I'm also known to play a few practical jokes around the PD, police department. At that time, I had quite a few thoughts running through my head. Is there anything I've done in the last month that the chief should be calling me about? Haven't done any practical jokes lately. Should I let the call go to voicemail, and maybe he'll leave a message? Ultimately, I decided to answer the call, and the chief led the conversation with, "Don't worry, you aren't in trouble." There was definitely a sigh of relief on my end. Chief Milburn told me that I had been nominated and selected for the 2022 Officer of the Year award. I was honored and humbled to receive the news from Chief Milburn, as there are so many officers at Edina who do great work and who are worthy of the award. When I first started working here at Edina, I learned real quick that Edina Police Department is not just a police department, but in fact one big family. I learned the job from great officers who mentored me and who were always there for me when I needed help. I continue to learn from my partners daily. I feel it is my duty to try to emulate those officers who made me the officer I am today and to pass my knowledge on to our new partners. I can honestly say that I believe the Edina Police Department has some of the best police officers in the state of Minnesota. My partners handle calls for service like every other department, but often go above and beyond to give a level of service that cannot be matched. My partners build relationships with people and truly do care about the people they interact with. Over the past few years, the job of being a police officer has come with many challenges. COVID-19, multiple riots, record numbers of officers leaving for medical reasons or leaving the profession in general, and staffing shortages across the state have made this job difficult. My partners have continued to step up to every challenge that comes their way, and even on the worst days, they make it easier to come to work and put the uniform on. I'm honored to be selected as the 2022 Officer of the Year, but give credit to all my partners and coworkers who have helped me along the way. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask the entire council to come down for this photo. I think this is an important one.
Yeah.
Cozy up. Would you like some with your family too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure, she wants to meet your family. Chief, you want to come back up? We'll do both. Chief and the family. Do baby.
You want the baby?
That might take about an hour.
He's so cute. He's so cute. He's all dressed up.
Chief and I will be one, we'll duck out and then you go and have a family first. No, you guys come in, all family and the mayor, and we'll get out of the way and then it can be just family. Okay. There's two families.
I'm gonna sleep through the whole thing. Nice. Okay. Thank you. That.
One more time. Okay. So yeah, folks, feel free to go ahead and exit. You have things you need to do. While they're exiting, we'll bring up Melissa Madison and her colleague Kate, and we're going to get a 494 quarter commission. Okay. These are two women that have been doing this work for over 20 years now. When I was on the 494 quarter commission years ago, Melissa got hired. Kate too, so it's good to have them here. And Member Pierce is on the 494 quarter commission now, and of course the commission is about to embark on this biggest project ever along with MnDOT. which is 494 reconstruction. So, Melissa Madison, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here with you again. A delight, especially on this evening and the special recognition of your police officer. Thank you for having us back to give a brief update. I know you have such a busy agenda, and we want to thank you, especially Mayor Hovland, for your many years of service with the 494 Corridor Commission, as well as Carrie Teague, and now Councilmember James Pierce. Thank you for your leadership and your great ideas. Jennifer, is there a clicker? Thank you so much. Awesome.
I think we either need a little more volume on her microphone or maybe have you hold it a little bit, just a little bit closer.
Okay, thank you.
That's better. Yeah,
Perfect.
thank you.
So we work together, the 494 Corridor Commission, with the fellow cities of Bloomington, Richfield, Eden Prairie, and Minnetonka. The 494 Corridor Commission formed itself back in 1986 when the 5 cities decided to work together on transportation improvements in the 494 area. And the graphic on this slide, the fine print might be hard to read, but it represents the roadway and interchange projects as well as the transit projects and major projects that we're all working on together. And just a little bit of interesting data about the 494 corridor. 19% of the metro area population lives along the corridor. 21% of the metro area jobs are located on the corridor, and over 313,000 jobs are on the corridor compared with the downtowns of St. Paul and Minneapolis combined. The Corridor Commission did a study of commute behavior on 494 and learned that 95% of the people who work along 494 drive themselves to work. And 4% were carpooling, 1% were biking and taking transit, and 30% of the respondents indicated they would be willing to try transit, and another 30% open to trying carpooling. And so at that time, the Corridor Commission hired our staff, and we call ourselves commuter services, to work with employers to reach employees, the commuters, so we could help shift drive-alone behavior into sustainable modes. And we have a wide array of resources for both employers and also for commuters and individuals. So this slide represents some of the services and resources available to employers: displays and a free outdoor bike rack, as well as preferential carpool parking management. Our staff holds about 100 to 130 on-site commuter fairs with employers and multi-tenant office buildings in a given year. We hold lunch and learns, and we have a wide breadth of resources for telework and hybrid work arrangements, and we also provide construction-related updates. We created the brand Twin Cities Telework a few years back, and we have quite a few resources to assist employers as well as managers and teleworkers and hybrid workers. We put a flyer of those resources in your packet. And in the past year, our staff through Twin Cities Telework has assisted over 300 employers with telework and hybrid resources. And we have the URL to the tctelework.com website here. Kate and I, our vice president, we put together a representative list of some of the employers that we are working with in Edina. So you'll see that on these two slides. And we're showing a picture of our demonstration Metro Transit bus bike rack that we take to events so that people can learn how to put their bike on the Metro Transit bus rack in a no-stress environment. And then we have great resources for individuals that we call our commute concierge. We do ride matching to help individuals find or form a carpool, as well as the same for van pooling. And we provide customized transit information with a trip itinerary with schedules and 2 free passes so people can give it a try. We really find that individualized assistance is the key to helping someone who lives in a suburb that works in a suburb give an alternative a try. We have great resources for bicycle commuting, and we promote the best kept secret, I like to say, from the Metropolitan Council is the Guaranteed Ride Home program, which provides people with $100 of free taxi rides in a year in case they need a safety net for the reason that they've not driven alone to work. So if they take transit or ride their bike or carpool, etc. And then great resources for telework and hybrid working. Including, I should mention, we have mental health resources. So this is the month to recognize and celebrate mental health. So we have mental health resources also for teleworkers. And new this year is the residential transit pass that has come out of its pilot phase with Metro Transit, where Metro Transit is now able to offer and sell bulk transit passes to multifamily owners and operators, where there would be one pass given per unit, and the price is $14 per pass per month for unlimited rides. And our staff has reached out to 586 multifamily property managers in our 5 cities recently to let them know about the pass, as well as with your each of our cities' HRAs. And this is a representative slide of what an average annual result by switching people from driving alone into an alternative mode looks like, where the number of new transit riders, new carpoolers, new bicycle commuters, etc. In a typical year, on an average year, we are able to convert over 5,700 drive-alone commuters into a sustainable mode 3 or more days per week. And that results in an estimated 56 million vehicle miles avoided annually. And the 56 million vehicle miles avoided is over 23,000 metric tons of CO2 emissions saved. And it would take over 1 million mature trees to reduce the same amount of CO2 emissions. The City of Edina's membership in the 494 Corridor Commission allows every resident, every commuter, and every employer free access to our resources and services. We work with over 1,200 employers each year, and we also provide transportation resources to all new residents in Edina as of this year. And just to wrap things up together, we achieve meaningful results. We appreciate your longtime membership in the 494 Corridor Commission, and it's been a pleasure. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer.
Yes, thank you for that great presentation. It's really, you continue to do effective work, I think, year over year. So thanks for coming and giving our community an update. Is there questions for Ms. Madison or comments from any council members? All right. Member Risser.
Well, it is good to see you and to work with you. And I don't know if you want to talk about the changes that may happen this year along the 494 corridor, just real briefly.
thank you for your kind words, Mayor Hovland and Councilmember Risser. So MnDOT has a major project that will begin in 2023, not long around the corner, and that will be it's the project called 494 Airport to 169, and it'll be a long project done in several phases, and the first couple projects will start their staging and will have some impact with Edina, and we are keeping close contact with Councilmember Pierce and Andrew Scipione, and anyone, we're very happy to provide anyone with regular updates from MnDOT as they come out on this construction project. I know my answer was vague, but I didn't actually prepare for a presentation on that.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No,
I was
not
just
at all.
thinking about the near Nicollet, and now I can't remember those two entry ramps or whatever.
Yes.
That was,
right.
that was the only.
The access consolidation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. So there will be 2 access consolidations on 494 that the access consolidation won't happen for quite a while. That won't happen in 2023. And if you're interested, the council might be interested in a presentation on the project where we can help coordinate MnDOT to give you more specifics on the project.
Okay, maybe. That sounds wonderful. That's more timely. I think yeah. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Thanks, Melissa. Thanks for being here. Kate, thanks for being here as well. All right, now I'm going to turn it over to Director Benarott, our Communications Director. We've got a hometown hero, and we celebrated him a little bit at the State of the Community. We got to give him a shout out, but now we get to give him a better shout out, I think, a more appropriate.
I hope so.
Isolated sort of shout out, and it's well deserved. Andy Warzak's done some really great things in our community. So Director Benarott, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Hovland. As you all know, Edina is made up of people who pride themselves in making this city a great place for living, learning, raising families, and doing business. For more than a decade, we've recognized some of those people as hometown heroes. We write stories about them for our website and our social media accounts, and now we're honoring them here at your meetings too. Tonight, I would like you to honor a resident who has been a true champion of sustainability for our community. Andy Warzak has had a lifelong passion for trees. He owns Edina property. He claims it's a relatively small lot, and there wasn't as much he could do with the landscaping and trees when he first moved there in 2015. Chowan Park is close by, giving him a unique way to feel ownership in and give back to his adoptive community. About a year after moving here, he started conversations with our city forester, Luther Overholt, about donating and planting trees in city parks, starting with Chowan. Over the past several years, Mr. Warzak has given the city gifts twice per year to buy and plant trees. He is also a proud board member of Green Minneapolis, which has a mission to expand the tree canopy in the Twin Cities metro area by 5 million by 2040. Mr. Warzak finds it rewarding to do something today for the tomorrow of his children and future grandchildren. Please join me in thanking Mr. Warzak for his generosity to our community. Thank you. And if you'd like to say a few words, we'd appreciate it.
I'll be very brief. So, I'll be very brief. I mean, I
I'm trying to do a little bit myself. I know based on the lunch I was at with Mayor Hovland, I was able to see all the things that Edina's doing. It's great. I'm proud to be part of a city that's really thinking about the environment and carbon footprint and all those kinds of things. So I'm doing my little part. I'm glad the city's doing their part. And I just encourage everybody in the city, here today, on TV, whatever, to do their little part. Planting a tree, doing solar, buying a more gas-efficient car or electric car. Just like think about the one thing you can do this year, and just keep doing better. And we'll make it better for my kids that are now almost 2, almost 4. But little by little, it's just those little steps that we take that make a big difference. So.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Warthog. Next matter on this portion of the agenda is a proclamation involving Building Safety Month. And we've got Nate Borwedge here with us, the interim chief building official for the city of Edina, to accept the proclamation. But first I'll read it and ask the council to adopt it. Proclamation for Building Safety Month, May 2023, reads as follows. Whereas our city of Edina is committed to recognizing that our growth and strength depends on the safety and essential role of our homes, buildings, and infrastructure, both in everyday life and in times of natural disaster. And whereas our confidence in the structural integrity of these buildings that make up our community is achieved through the devotion of vigilant guardians, such as building safety and fire prevention officials and others in the construction industry who work year-round to ensure the safe construction of buildings. And whereas these guardians are dedicated members of the International Code Council that are experts in the built environment to create and implement the highest quality codes to protect us in the buildings where we live, learn, work, and play. And whereas these modern building codes include safeguards to protect the public from natural disasters such as hurricanes, snowstorms, tornadoes, wildland fires, floods, and earthquakes. And whereas Building Safety Month is sponsored by the International Code Council to remind the public about the critical role of our community's largely unknown protectors of public safety, our local code officials, who assure us of safe, sustainable, and affordable buildings that are essential to our prosperity. And whereas it starts with you, the theme for Building Safety Month 2023 encourages us all to raise awareness about building safety on a personal, local, and global scale. And whereas each year, in observance of Building Safety Month, people all over the world are asked to consider the commitment to improve building safety and to acknowledge the essential service provided to all of us by local and state building departments, fire prevention bureaus, and federal agencies in protecting lives and property. Now, therefore, the City Council of the City of Edina, Minnesota, does hereby proclaim the month of May 2023 as Building Safety Month in the City of Edina accordingly, and encourages our citizens to join with their community in participation in Building Safety Month. Is there a motion to adopt that proclamation as read?
So moved.
Second.
Member Pierce moves, Member Jackson seconds the adoption of the Building Safety Proclamation designating Building Safety Month as May 2023. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adopting the motion as stated say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
I'm going to hand this to you. Well, go ahead and make your remarks. I'll take this
Right now? All right. Well, thank you, Mayor Hovland and City Council members. So I am Nate Borwedge. I am the interim chief building official for the City of Edina. Our building inspections department team consists of 17 employees here at the city. We provide services to the community that safeguard life, health, property, and public welfare by regulating and controlling the design, alteration, construction, materials, use, and occupancy of buildings and homes in Edina. Our department is a proud member of the International Code Council, and we will work to promote public awareness of the role building safety and fire prevention officials play to protect lives and structures. I would like to thank you all for supporting our building inspections department and ask for your continued support in Building Safety Month during May. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now the last matter on this portion of the agenda, our transportation planner, Andrew Scipione, has it, and it is our annual, in this case, 2022 Pedestrian and Cyclist Safety Fund Summary Report. And Mr. Scipione, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. It's my pleasure to be here tonight to present the 2022 PACS Fund Summary Report. What I'll be doing tonight is I'll be going over the expenditures last year, projects that were constructed using PACS funds, and then give the council and the community a preview of projects that are proposed for this year as well as next year. So as a reminder, the PACS Fund, or the Pedestrian and Cyclist Safety Fund, was approved by Council in December of 2012. It is a fund made up of revenue from utility franchise fees. It generates about $1.2 million annually, and that money is exclusively dedicated to improvements to our non-motorized transportation network. So that means sidewalks, bikeways, pedestrian crossings, shared use paths, and associated signage and pavement markings. In 2022, we had about $1.7 million available. That includes rollover from the previous year. In 2022, about $804,000 was spent on PACS items, 55% of that on new facilities. You can see the breakdown here for construction. We had about $445,000 on new pedestrian facilities, and then that combined with maintenance of existing facilities, some funding spent toward the citywide speed limit reduction program, and final payments for previous projects brings the total construction cost of $471,000. And then administrative fees, we have professional services designed for future multi-use or multimodal improvement projects, as well as maintenance supplies, transportation planner, salary and benefits, and our new sidewalk inspector salary and benefits, which brings the total administrative cost of $332,000. So just a quick overview of projects that were constructed last year. Blake Road sidewalks and bike lanes. This project is continuing on into 2023, but that will involve, as I mentioned, sidewalks and bike lanes. We also, in the Morningside neighborhood, that was started last year on Grimes Avenue, there'll be a new bike boulevard, as well as some sidewalk repairs done as part of the roadway reconstruction project. Within the Weber Park, as part of the Morningside Flood Infrastructure Project, the PACS Fund paid for a series of new shared use paths. The PACS Fund also paid for some paver replacements in the 50th and France District, specifically improvements associated with pedestrian curb ramps. We constructed the first phase of the McCully shared use path from Timber Trail to Gleason Road, and as well as another shared use path in the Bristol and Mayville Park, which was also combined with the stormwater management project. Looking ahead to this year, we're going to continue a lot of work in the Morningside neighborhood. We have a number of new sidewalks that are proposed in the Morningside C area, as well as continuing the work that was started last year, as I mentioned, in Morningside D and E and on Blake Road. We also are hoping to construct a segment of the France Avenue sidewalk on the east side from 58th to 60th. We're looking at replacing some existing pedestrian flashers at the intersections of Valley View Road and Concord and 70th and Wooddale Avenue. We're looking to replace those with RRFBs, which are more the current standard. PACS Fund is also paying for a traffic study on Valley View Road between Wooddale and Highway 62. This study is to look at existing lane configurations and determine whether or not we can implement standard bike lanes on that roadway as part of an upcoming overlay. The PACS Fund is also paying for design services for a 30% design of the Roslyn Park pedestrian bridge. We're looking at designing an ADA-compliant bridge to replace the existing structure. We're also going to continue the McCully Trail shared use path from Post Lane to Timber Trail. We're doing a number of improvements around Cornelia Elementary School. Most of these will be funded by a Safe Routes to School infrastructure grant that we received last year. And then this last project actually is going to, has been pushed to 2024, but Hennepin County is doing a project on France Avenue between 78th or 76th and American Boulevard in Bloomington. And part of that project will involve new shared use paths in Edina. In 2024, again, more segments of the France Avenue sidewalk between Fuller and 57th. Olinger Boulevard sidewalk from Vernon Avenue to Tracy. This is a recommended Active Routes to School project. Continuing the McCully Trail shared use path down to Indian Hills Way. A new sidewalk and shared use path in the Concord neighborhood as part of a roadway reconstruction project. That last phase of the France Avenue sidewalk connecting down to Highway 62. More sidewalks in the Southdale B neighborhood, again, as part of a roadway reconstruction project. And then on 66th Street, we're looking to replace an existing paver shared use path on the north side with asphalt so it's more accessible to pedestrians, cyclists, and those who use mobility devices in the area. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Yeah, questions for Mr. Scipione? Yes, Member Jackson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for this report. Very exciting to see the paths coming in. I didn't know, I guess I've seen the Linmar Basin, this new sidewalk there. Can you tell me, is there a plan to connect that now with the 72nd and France development where we have the new sidewalk going in? Can you give me an update on how that connects together or if it, whether it does? Or have you thought about it?
Thank you for the question. It is something I've thought about, and I've also been thinking about this corridor in terms of the West Promenade concept that's been discussed before. If you recall, I believe it's on the consent agenda, but the section of Valley View Road just north of here is going to be reconstructed this year, and that's going to include part of that West Promenade concept. So I think there's a possibility that this could serve as part of that corridor. For now, the Ped and Bike Master Plan doesn't recommend any facilities immediately to the south, but that is something that staff is considering.
Okay, terrific. Thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Scipione? I've got one for you, and it's been one that's been kind of lingering in my mind as we have this new sidewalk inspector person, and we have sidewalk panels in different neighborhoods that need repair or replacement. And we've been, as I understand it, specially assessing properties for those panel repairs and replacements. And it strikes me that it's all part of the non-motorized system of transportation that we're using and developing, and we're replacing pavers with asphalt, and it just seems that there's some fundamental fairness in thinking about including those expenditures as PAX funds expenditures as opposed to especially assessing them. And it's just been gnawing at me, frankly. And I don't know if it means that if we are going to do that kind of work in the PAX fund, we need to raise the PAX fund. It sounded like from your report that we're going to carry over about $800,000 worth of revenue from a prior year. Plus, we generate about $1.2 million a year in revenue off the existing collections, and so you've got about $2 million going into 2023 to work with. And I'm just wondering if you could speak to that a little bit, because I'd either like to get comfortable with the notion that we're specially assessing, or I'd like us to take up the conversation about having those sidewalk panels repaired or replaced using the PAX fund.
Thank you for the question, Mayor. Certainly it's something staff is willing to have more conversation about. The kind of existing policy that we're following is that the sidewalk panels that are being replaced that we're assessing to, especially assessing to residents, are on sidewalks that the city doesn't maintain. So the city has clear guidance on, the city maintains sidewalks that are on municipal state aid streets, that are on county roads, that are recommended in our Active Routes to School plan, and that are adjacent to city parks and city facilities. So sidewalks that don't meet any of those criteria, those are maintained by adjacent property owners, including snow clearing. So that is, I guess if there's interest in spending PAX fund on that, I think it would require a larger discussion in terms of long-term maintenance of those sidewalk segments as well.
All right. Member Risser has a thought.
Thank you for your presentation. And with the active routes to school plans, do we have active routes for residents who are getting to Richfield schools and Hopkins schools who live in Edina? Is that part of our network, or is that not?
Thank you for the question. So our current active routes to school plan, which is from 2014, to my knowledge, doesn't really consider schools that are outside of Edina. However, with the PACS equity criteria, that does include schools that are around the periphery of our community. So in that way, we are taking into account facilities that would connect to schools in neighboring communities.
Thank you. I just remember, standing between Hopkins and Edina and realizing how they had sidewalks and we did not, and just thinking about that part of Edina, the northwest area. So it's good to know that's on the radar. Thank you.
Okay, well, we'll have that conversation about use of PACS funds to do sidewalk repair on what we would call, I guess you would call private sidewalks, but when everybody in the neighborhood is walking up and down the sidewalks, recognizing they're on private property, usually in a public right-of-way. I'd still like to have the conversation. So maybe we'll talk about it a little bit during mayor and council comments and see if it's something that colleagues here want to talk about in a little bit more detail. So this was really a great report, though. You got some good things going on in 23, and you can see 24. We're just making great progress on this non-motorized transportation system, and we thank you for leading all of that effort.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
All right. Thanks for being here. All right. That completes the special recognitions and presentations portion of the agenda this evening. We've got one public hearing matter, and this was one that we carried over from the last meeting. And it involves a recommendation from our police department and our city clerk that we deny the issuance of a on-sale wine and 3-2 beer malt liquor license for DeLeo Brothers Pizza. I think all of us thought, and staff as well, and the PD too, I think that the applicant ought to have a voice, and there ought to be some due process around this thing that makes everybody comfortable regardless of what the decision ends up being. So I'm going to turn now to Clerk Allison and maybe Lieutenant Conboy. I don't know who wants to go first, and I think we have the owner of the establishment here too, DeLeo Brothers Pizza. We'll want to give them a chance to speak. So let me have staff go first.
Okay.
All right, and you are Mr. Dahlman?
I am.
All right. Mr. Dahlman, stand by. Just go ahead and sit down, and I'm going to hear from our clerk first, and if she wants to turn it over to Lieutenant Conboy, we'll do it that way.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. You are correct that we decided that the proper way to handle this would have been to give the applicant due process. This is the first time we've actually dealt with this issue, and this is the best way we saw fit to deal with it. Just a little backstory. In 2021, Mr. Dahlman did not renew his liquor license. We made attempts to reach out to him to remind him, or at least to double check to see if he had just forgotten that it needed to be reviewed or to be renewed. We weren't able to get a hold of him, and so his liquor license was not renewed. After the March 31st deadline, we continued to reach out, could not get a hold of him. One day I took a field trip to his restaurant to see what was going on, and his liquor license was still posted, his menu was still posted, and liquor was still in the restaurant. I came back and I informed Lieutenant Conboy of this, and they did a compliance check, and liquor was sold to the undercover officers who did the compliance check. I should back up and add that when I was there, I did inform the employee that the liquor license was expired, that they should remove it from the wall, remove their menu of liquor, and also remove all alcohol from the premises. I can turn it over to Lieutenant Conboy now if you'd like to ask him any questions related to this matter. That is what has led to the denial of this liquor license today.
All right. Thank you, Clerk Allison. I'm going to turn now to Lieutenant Conboy to see if he has anything he wants to supplement in terms of the clerk's report. That was the basis for the recommendation. So Lieutenant Conboy, thanks for being with us this evening.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and Council. Thanks for having me. In addition to that, we actually did 2 compliance checks. We did just a compliance check throughout the city in early May of 2021, and that's when it was observed by the officers that he had a expired license displayed. No tickets were given, no citations. He was told about it. He was aware of it. At that point, that's when I spoke with City Clerk Allison about it, and that's when the story she told you, she went on her field trip there. She came back to me and explained to me what happened, and then that's when I sent another officer about a week later to do the same thing, to do a compliance check, and that officer was sold alcohol. So
and when was that second compliance check?
May 27th.
May 25th?
27th of 2021.
May 27, 2021.
Yep.
And that officer just, what did they observe again?
I'll have to read here in my write-up. The officer ordered a beer. She ordered food and beer, was advised that the beer she ordered was not available, so she ordered another one. The sale was rung up. She provided payment for it. So the transaction was completed.
Okay, that was an actual transaction as opposed to a warning that the vendor or the merchant was displaying an expired license. So in the second visit, our undercover person bought alcohol.
Yeah, so
from an entity that did not have a license.
Yeah, and so between City Clerk Allison and our 2 officers, that was a 2-week period where there was basically 3 times that he was selling without a license.
Okay. All right. Questions for Lieutenant Conboy or Clerk Allison from other council members? Let's hear from the owner of the establishment, DeLeo Brothers Pizza LLC, Nathaniel Dahlman. Mr. Dahlman, give us your name and your business address, please.
My name is Nathaniel Dahlman, owner and operator of DeLeo Bros Pizza. The address is 10 Southdale Center, Edina, Minnesota 55435, and we're in the unit 1705 in the Southdale Center Mall.
Okay. And so you've been attempting to renew your on-sale wine and on-sale 3-2 malt liquor license, and yes. This is something you obviously need for your business, but you've heard the folks from our staff, our city clerk and Lieutenant Conboy, talk about the fact that
I don't deny anything.
You knew you were operating without a license and you sold liquor to somebody without a license?
Yes, I did that.
All right, so why don't you give us your side of the story, and why don't you tell us why you think you're entitled to some relief here and why you should get a license?
I was not asking for relief, nor was I pursuing a liquor license after that incident. I was going to go through the process, whatever legal things that the police department might bring upon that. So I didn't, from what I understand, nothing was presented or, I don't know how you say it, prosecutors chose not to pursue it. So out of that, I took that as a slap on the hand, but I just didn't choose to pursue a liquor license even in 2022. I did not try to renew one at that time. My intention was through the times of COVID and things like that this was pretty tough. My lease was to end January 1st of 2023. So I was preparing to just close up. The business, the landlord, kind of came to me and they really would like us to stay, and they gave us a great opportunity. I looked at that as an opportunity then, okay, if they're going to give me this deal to stay in the mall and support the mall through pizza, then I would also like to pursue a liquor license again. And so that's why I chose to try to into 2023, and that's why we're here at this moment. Trying to understand whether what should be done or can be done, or what kind of penalties would it be able to have to do in order to approve just the sale of beer and wine, not hard liquor or anything like that. So,
yeah, understood as to what you're requesting. That prompt any questions from council members? I was going to turn to our city attorney and ask him what our options were. I think we understand denial is one, of course. supporting the staff recommendation. Full grant is another option, I would imagine, or some sort of probationary grant or a conditional grant, put them on some kind of probation for a period of time, and then subject the business to increased inspection level over that probationary period. Is that an option?
Mayor, I think it is an option. So city code allows for suspension or revocation of a license. I understand he doesn't currently have a license, but you could still suspend or temporarily revoke his ability to obtain that license, place a time period on that, and then, he'd be eligible to reapply after that suspension period or revocation period ended. So I think that'd be another option in addition to just flat approval or denial. The council could treat this basically as though he did have a license and then, impose the kind of suspension period the council would have imposed if he did have a license, and then basically effectively reinstate that or allow him to apply for a new one after that suspension period ended. I think that'd be a third option in addition to just approval or denial.
That one I'm having a hard time understanding. The suspended, he doesn't have a license, so what is there to suspend? I mean, it seems to me like you're talking more about, if we wanted to give him a chance to be successful in his business at the mall and to be able to serve 3-2 beer and wine, but we wanted to make sure that he stayed in compliance, could you issue a license that was a shorter duration than a year, and then let him know that he's going to be subject to more frequent inspections, and if he fails an inspection or a certain number of inspections, whatever the council decided, then he'd be subject to revocation. So, I mean, what are the options around that kind of an approach?
Yeah, I think that'd be an option as well. So certainly you could issue the license and advise him that he'd be subject to more frequent inspections, and if he failed one of those, then you could revoke or suspend the license at that point.
Okay.
Or another option, Mr. Mayor, based on what Attorney Kendall stated, since he has not had a license since 2021, you could consider that to be his punishment, that he did not have a license, and issue a new license if you so choose, and conditional on, for example, not failing a compliance check in May of next year, 2023. Or actually, there'll be another compliance check coming up in May of 2023. So not fail, or it could be conditional on not failing compliance check in May of 2023, and also not failing a compliance check in May of 2024. Otherwise, you could revoke his license at that time.
Okay.
If his license is revoked, if you do revoke his license, he has an establishment in the Mall of America, and if he's revoked and he plans to get a license in the Mall of America, he has to let them know that he's been revoked. And so this revocation could affect his ability to get a license in another city also.
Member Jackson?
I've got a couple of questions. First of all, for Clerk Allison, how long is the period of the license? How long is it good for?
It is for 1 year.
For 1 year. So if we issue it now, next year he'd have to reapply and then be checked in May.
That is correct.
Okay. Now, and a question for our appellant. Are you currently serving liquor at this?
No,
okay.
I have not since the incident with the police officers.
Okay, so it's all clear and everything. Okay, good. Thank you.
All right, go through this option with the suspension, because he hasn't had a license since 2021. Really, it's like he's applying for a new license in my mind. So what Clerk Allison was proposing seems more logical, that we give him a conditional license. Is that what you said?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. If you so choose, you could approve it with a condition.
And the conditions would be that he passes a compliance check in May of this year, which is this month, and then you said May of 2024, but it strikes me that you'd want to do it more frequently than that.
Totally up to you. The reason I'm suggesting May of 2024 also is because today is May 2nd, and compliance check will be done probably May 13th.
We
Or it
do
hasn't.
one in the spring and one in the winter. We don't have specific dates. It could be May or June, it could be November or December.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mayor, I just want to point out that the council could direct the police department to do more frequent checks on this establishment.
Yep.
The police department's not limited to those two checks that they traditionally perform. They could certainly perform additional checks, either at their own discretion or if the council directed them to.
Yeah, that's what I was, yep, Member Pierce. Thoughts?
Yeah, so am I understanding this correctly, that twice liquor was sold and it shouldn't have been because the license was expired?
Correct.
Twice that we know of.
Twice, and then a third time when
Okay.
was there, so
Yeah.
it would have
in
occurred.
In 21,
Right.
yeah. And so since then, you haven't sold any liquor?
No.
Yeah. So, I get trying to be accommodating, and I'm actually for that, but let's not just bypass the point that you did something 3 times that you weren't supposed to do. And granted, you can have a myriad of reasons for that, and we can be compassionate as a council. All of that is fair game, but we should acknowledge that, right? We have policies, procedures that were violated knowingly 3 times, and for the clerk to come out and try to rectify the issue. So kudos for, in my opinion, going above and beyond. And so I think we should acknowledge that in some way, and not just move on with trying to figure out how to make this work. And so I'm actually not sure how to do that other than making the statement. I don't know who that was. Did you have a follow-up point to that, Member Risser?
I agree with what you're saying, Member Pierce, and actually Attorney Kendall's original suggestion really does resonate with me. I get the reality that liquor has not been served for a period of time, but that was through the choice of the, I don't know, the appellant, thank you, Member Jackson. And so now is the time where he's stepping up and asking, and it just seems like the due process or what would normally happen should take place. And whatever the suspension period could go into effect now, and then when that's passed, if that is the regular protocol, then I think that would acknowledge the situation. So we would be following the standard course of action.
So that's where I was going. In whatever solution we come up with, there should be some acknowledgement of how we got here, and then there should be a process to earn your way back into having the license and being able to operate as you were prior to 2021. And so I couldn't follow the options to do that because you, Attorney Kendall, you talked about a number of options. And so I wanted to make that point as we start to figure out what options we want to move forward with.
Member Pierce, I'm struggling to find a good way to describe it, but I guess what I could try to say is the council could issue a license, but then immediately suspend it for some period, and then allow it to become active after that suspension is lifted.
Member Jackson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What is the penalty for selling without a license?
It's a gross misdemeanor if he was prosecuted.
Okay, so it's not just a suspension of the license, it goes beyond that.
That is correct. I would defer probably to Attorney Kendall. I'm sorry.
The server is charged with a gross misdemeanor.
That's correct.
And
Typically,
the
the server,
establishment that's a license holder is subject to suspension or fine.
all correct, Mayor. So typically, the server is charged with a gross misdemeanor. The license holder is subject to whatever administrative penalties the council chooses to impose. The license holder, unless they're the one that's served, is typically not charged with the crime. And also, there's no requirement that the server be convicted of the crime in order for the council to take action on the license from an administrative standpoint. The two issues are separate.
So our inspections have typically been the type where we use a minor.
Correct.
To order liquor, and if they serve the minor, that's when the server then gets the gross misdemeanor. If they served alcoholic beverages and didn't have a license, would that server still be subject to a gross misdemeanor?
I think that might be a misdemeanor, Your Honor. I think it's a gross misdemeanor to sell to a minor. It's a misdemeanor to sell to an adult without a license. I'd have to look that up to be certain, but that's my recollection.
So another idea was, I was thinking, the clerk issues these licenses and they're an annual license and they pay a fee for that annual license. But we could subject it to conditions, and we could subject it to conditions such as monthly or quarterly inspections. And if they fail one inspection or two inspections in a row, we could subject them, you've got a lot of flexibility in there. The license would be revoked. And if that were the circumstance, it seems to me like if there was, if he failed one inspection, it's hard not to give the vendor due process, the store owner. But if they fail two inspections in a row, or two over a 4-month period or something, I don't know, I'm just searching for some ideas here, then it would be an automatic suspension. So the question, I guess, is can you have a revocation without any due process based on the issuance of a conditional license? Does that make sense?
I think they would still be entitled to due process.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too.
Yeah. I mean, you could certainly put conditions on that if a violation is proven, then you would revoke the license, but I think the violation would still have to be some due process to show that violation.
Member Pierce.
Just another question. When we've done these in the past, there have been fines that we've assessed.
Yeah.
So have we done that in this case?
This is a unique case because he did not have a license. And that's the issue that we're faced with, is that we're trying to hold him accountable because he did something when he did not have a license, and he's applying for a license now.
The more common situation that we've addressed at the council has been the illegal sale, right? When they do a sale to a minor or they fail a compliance test, and then we do have this opportunity to fine them or to force them to stop selling for a certain number of days. We have a progressive fine schedule based on the intensity of or the repeated violations. We're trying to fit this into that system, but it doesn't just quite fit.
So Lieutenant Conboy or Mr. Dahlman, were you fined for selling liquor without a license?
No, I did not receive any
Is that a
notification after that.
Because you couldn't do that under the law, or?
The first compliance check we did, the undercover officers who went in there merely acknowledged that his license had expired, advised Mr. Dahlman of it, and he made mention of paperwork's in the mail, I'm starting it, so they left it at that. So that's why there was no citations issued that day. The second time we went in there, when we sent the undercover officers in there after Clerk Allison, the officer wrote up a report, and the way it was titled, it was never submitted to our city attorney for prosecution. I've talked with City Clerk Allison about this, and Manager Neal, this was 2 years ago. There was some transition going on in our division. We don't have an answer as to why it was never sent to our city prosecutor, but as Mr. Dahlman stated earlier, he kind of took that as a slap on the wrist, and that's exactly what it was.
Okay. So there was never really a conviction in that situation.
That's right.
So.
I chose not to send the paperwork that I was on my desk, filled out, trying to get in the procrastination that I was doing at that time, to not submit it at all and just say, I'm just not going to serve beer for 2021 to 2022. 2022 came around, and again, I kind of looked at that as, do I really need to serve beer and wine and take on that responsibility that I did not follow, as I had kind of felt like I was going to end my lease in 2023 of January. So I kind of chose to not apply again and go through this process, maybe what we would be doing right now a year ago if I had chosen to do so.
Member Risser, you had a thought?
My one concern is if the license, well, he'll get a license, it won't expire for a year, so that's good. I would hate for a server to get charged because it has expired.
My experience on the council is that we've only seen the situation where a server gets charged with a gross misdemeanor if they served a minor.
Right.
So that kind of begs the question, if there was any kind of violation, that's maybe the kind of condition we want to impose, not just if you serve a minor, then you're subject to revocation, but any kind of violation. So if we're talking about licenses being issued on a one-year basis, and we can impose conditions on those licenses that make it subject to revocation, what would those conditions be? That he's subject to inspection once a month, once a quarter. I mean, these are ideas again. And if he fails an inspection, the license gets revoked, or is subject to a revocation proceeding, because he's still going to get due process. Manager Neal.
Yes, Your Honor. I think that would be something that, from a staff perspective, we could be recommending to you. That there is this process that we already have in code for progressive penalties when there is a violation. But in this case, you could make this a condition that we're not going to use that. We're going to go right to revocation if there's any violation of the ordinance. I would suggest not making it too complicated to process. We have the authority now to do a compliance check really anytime we feel we need to do a compliance check. We're not limited to, as our city attorney said, to doing them once or twice a year. We could put that schedule together, and we could do them as needed.
Not make it a monthly or a quarterly condition. Just say if there's any violation of the license, it's subject to revocation, right. Immediate revocation, as opposed to the typical methodology that we use. With the exception of due process before the council, but that would be the penalty on the table. Revocation, because he'd have due process.
Right.
Yep. Okay.
So in that case, then the punishment for violation is that you get your license, but we check on you more frequently, is what we're saying.
Mm-hmm. We don't tell them how often we're going to check on them.
Sure. Sure. Go ahead, Member Jackson, or I don't know who was.
Okay. So I'm just trying to figure out some language here that. Member Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. He did operate without selling liquor for 2 years, and that's a loss of revenue. So it's not a punishment imposed by us, but it is a result of our checking on him. So he lost the revenue of liquor sales for 2 years. So that's something to consider as well.
So in those compliance checks, we know that if we pursue with this, that he would have a license. So the things that would be checked for at that point would be serving underage and serving things outside of the license, right? Like if it were hard alcohol in this situation. What are the other things then that is checked for or could be considered a violation?
If I may, Mr. Mayor, he does not have a 2 a.m. license. So if he's serving after 1 a.m., then that would be a violation also.
Or before 8 a.m.
Or before 8 a.m.
Yeah, so times.
Yes, yep, exactly. An additional point of information that I'd like to share in connection to what Councilmember Jackson mentioned. If you deny his license tonight, he would also be out $3,300. That is his application fee. That would not be refunded because of a denial. So.
And what are the fees associated with those violations? And I understand that we don't necessarily have a violation for this in particular, but the other violations that exist, what is that fee schedule?
Member Agnew, I believe it starts at $500 for the first violation, and it increases thereafter. So it's from 1 to 2 to 3, and the fourth is a revocation. I believe the highest amount is $1,000 for a third violation. So I'm guessing second violation might be $750.
I was thinking it might be $1,500. I thought so too, because we did some. I think it's $1,500.
Could be. I might be speaking out of turn. Yeah.
So here's some potential language. Motion to grant a new on-sale wine and on-sale 3.2% malt liquor license to DeLeo Brothers Pizza LLC, such license subject to revocation for any violation of the ordinance relating to such license during the period of licensure or something like that. I don't know, there's maybe too much license.
And so
the use of the word license. And
so the way that was worded, then if there is a violation, then it's just revocation. So there's no escalating fine or whatever.
That's right. Subject to revocation. And then, of course, he'd have his due process rights to say why he shouldn't be subject to revocation. So, do you want to polish that up at all, Attorney Kendall, or should I try to restate it?
I'd appreciate it if you'd restate it, Mr. Mayor.
All right. So the motion would be, at least if I'm understanding the council correctly, that they want to give DeLeo Brothers and Mr. Dahlman a chance to succeed here, and they're mindful of the fact that we've got a mall operator here as well. We want them to be successful. But there's
Your
consequences here.
Excuse me, we're still in public hearing at this point, too.
Yeah, so that's right. But if we once we conclude the public hearing, thank you for that. The motion could potentially be that we would issue a on-sale wine and on-sale 3.2% malt liquor license to DeLeo Brothers Pizza LLC, subject to revocation for any violation of the ordinance relating to such license. All right, now let's keep in mind that as I had that reminder from City Manager Neal, that this is a public hearing matter. And so let's step now aside from our conversation and open this matter up for public testimony. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to testify regarding this matter?
Hello, Patrick McDougall, residing at 3250 West 66th Street, number 637. Good evening, Mayor and the members of the City Council. Thank you for hearing the public's opinion on this matter. Based on the way that the winds are blowing, based on your conversation, my prepared remarks maybe don't make a whole lot of sense, but since you haven't made a motion and you haven't voted on it, I'm going to just read them as I had authored them. I'm here tonight to disagree with the city staff's recommendation to deny the DeLeo Brothers Pizza liquor license application. The city has full authority under Minnesota Statute Section 340A.415 on each violation to suspend or revoke the license and or impose civil penalties of up to $2,000, but chose not to. A reasonable person filling out a new license application may not have considered the verbal warnings by EPD and city staff to constitute formal violations under state and local law, and thus might honestly believe and indicate as such that they had no violations. For the city to forego formal citations at the time of violation and now deny the renewal it sought seems overly punitive. The applicant is trying to right previous wrongs and be in good standing with our city. Many of our community's businesses are still struggling with volume that has not recovered to pre-pandemic levels. Given this ongoing stress on our local businesses, a liquor license should be issued. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. McDougall. Anyone else in the audience wish to testify regarding this potential matter? Or this matter of the potential issuance or denial of a license to the DeLeo Brothers Pizza? All right, let's go to see if we have anybody online.
I do have someone online, but that person has not signaled to speak. As a reminder, you need to press *1 on your telephone keypad to speak. I still don't see a signal, so I think it's safe for you to move forward.
Okay. First of all, let's take this in two steps. I want to thank Mr. McDougall again for coming in and providing another perspective in this matter. Is there a motion to close the public hearing in this matter?
So moved.
Is there a second? We got a motion and second to close the public hearing. Motion by Member Jackson, second by Member Pierce to close the public hearing in this matter. Any further discussion? All those in favor of closing the public hearing in this matter say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. And now let's go back to what we were thinking about. Are folks comfortable on the council with this route of a sort of conditional issuance of a license?
I would also want us to entertain, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if we can do this, so asking it also as a question, retroactively applying fines for the idea that there were potentially 3 or 2, if we consider only those by officers, violations. So some type of fine in conjunction with this for those.
Now, the problem I hear people discussing is that he never got convicted. So it's hard to impose a fine on somebody who never got convicted. So
we have an admission, but not a conviction, right? That's kind of the situation here.
I thought it was an interesting comment by our clerk that he had $3,300 at risk, and that's certainly significant for a small business operator like this. So, well, let me reread this possibility here and see if anybody wants to make a motion to this effect. Motion to grant a new on-sale wine and on-sale 3.2% malt liquor license to DeLeo Brothers Pizza, LLC, subject to revocation for any violation of the ordinance relating to such license. Is there a motion to adopt that? Is there a motion to that effect?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Member Jackson moves, Member Agnew seconds the adoption of the motion as stated. Further conversation, further discussion. All those in favor of adoption of the motion as stated, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. I want to thank our public witness for coming in and testifying. And Mr. Dahlman, thank you for coming in. Thank you for your candor, and we wish you the best, and make sure your servers know what's going on.
I appreciate that, and I will take this 100% seriously, especially with serving alcohol underage. That's not something that I would ever want to be part of. So,
all right. Good luck with your business.
Thank you, City Council.
That concludes the public hearing portion of the agenda. The next portion of the agenda is reports and recommendations, and we've got 3 matters here. First one is accepting donations on behalf of the city. That requires a supermajority, 2/3. Resolution 2023-32. Is there a motion to adopt 2023-32?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion motion by Member Jackson, second by Member Pierce to adopt Resolution 2023-32, accepting donations on behalf of the city of Edina. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of Resolution 2023-32 say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. We've got a nice donation to the police department from Croy Retail, DBA the St. Croix Shop. $219 for general use. Very generous gift from the St. Croix Shop. We thank you for that. and I'm sure our police department thanks you as well. Next is, under item B, is a sketch plan review for 5100 Eden Avenue. That's right in the old Public Works neighborhood there, and we sometimes refer to it as the building on stilts. And I'm going to turn to Director Teague, who's going to introduce the matter, and then we'll be taking it up with some architects and representatives of the Opus Group.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Just a quick introduction, and the development team will present the project in detail. So as mentioned, the site with the building on stilts, the applicant would propose to tear that building down. It's about a 38,000 square foot office building, and build a 7-story, 138 unit apartment building. 10% of the units would be for affordable housing within the project. A formal application, should they move forward with one, would require a rezoning. They're suggesting a PUD rezoning. There's some pretty significant flexibility that would be required through that PUD in terms of setbacks, building height, building coverage. Those are outlined in the staff memo. Some of the issues highlighted by the Planning Commission included the meeting of the PUD criteria, the purpose and intent, difficult with a single use, very small site. They were also concerned with the development, the Grandview development framework. A lot of references to page 18. Some of those are included in the packet, but the Grandview plan had suggested townhomes along Arcadia with the height closer to Highway 100, so they expressed concerns with that. So with that, I will introduce the Opus team. Theo Grothy and Nick Murnane will present the details of the project.
Mr. Murnane and Mr. Grothy, welcome.
Thank you.
No? Yes? Wonderful. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Thank you for having us tonight. We're very excited to be here. Again, my name is Nick Murnane with Opus Development and joined with Theo Grothy, part of our Opus AE group. Very excited to present our redevelopment for the Eden 100 building on stilts right across Highway 100. We've worked closely with city staff over the last couple of months to work with a project that we feel fits within the context of the neighborhood, meets some of the needs in the city, and also meets the 7 guiding principles as well as the Grandview framework for development. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Theo Grothy. We are going to walk through the presentation, but certainly want to leave plenty of time for questions, comments, and conversation. As Director Teague mentioned, we had comments from the Planning Commission last week that we are starting to already incorporate into our project, and we look forward to taking your comments and incorporating those into our design as well before our formal submittal. So with that, Theo, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Murnane.
Thank you. Like I mentioned, my name is Theo Grothy. I work with the architecture group at Opus, longtime resident of Edina, as most of us are here with our group. Actually live in the Grandview area over on Bedford Avenue. So this project is quite close to all of our hearts. And we've worked really hard to try to meet a lot of the goals that are set forth before we present it to you. Thank you, Carrie, for presenting the project, and Mayor Hovland and council members for listening. The project, like Carrie mentioned, is 138 apartment units in a 7-story structure with 171 parking stalls in a podium, two levels of parking, and 4 visitor parkings equaling a 1.25 parking ratio. The parking is enclosed in our 2 levels. Flat pipe parking with entrances off of the northwest and southeast corners into the level 1, and off of the west side into our lower level parking. Do this to try to increase our efficiency so that we can meet all the parking goals as well as keep the footprint as small as possible. Our unit mix includes studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and a number of upgraded 2-bedroom units on the upper level, as well as a couple of upgraded units on level 1. Our affordable units will be 10% of the mix at 50% AMI. We are working closely with the city. We've had a number of meetings referencing the Grandview guiding principles as well as the framework plan. Through that process, we turned our building, which was originally facing south towards the west, to front Arcadia to try to meet some of those goals that were listed in the guiding principles, allowing us to create some step backs along that street and really push the height back towards the Highway 100 side. We're also looking towards the future. Multimodal transportation has been brought up a couple of times tonight. We met with the city once about a possible bike and pedestrian bridge that may cross Highway 100 connecting to City Hall, and that bridge and connection possibly coming onto the north side of our property. So you'll see that we have a bike valet along that side to kind of nod to that gesture, as well as additional glass along there to try to activate that streetscape. Also looking towards Eden Avenue as well, additional step backs and facade moves along the portion above the podium to try to create some massing relief along that face as well. Most of the lower level is below grade on the north and the east side, and partially buried along Arcadia and Eden, with only full exposure at the southwest corner where the site is at its lowest, and that's where we would enter our lowest level parking. The project would include a pretty robust amenity package, including work from home, fitness, yoga, bike valet, and an amenity deck with pool, spa, seating, and outdoor kitchen, as well as a lounge on the topmost floor that would give a pretty nice view out to City Hall in the city. For those of you who know the site, there's a pretty healthy slope from the north side to the south side. So we're working hard to mitigate that as well as activate the streetscape and provide an enhanced pedestrian experience along both Arcadia and Eden. The current building is a 1960s era office building on stilts with surface parking under and around. At the southwest corner is a retaining wall that abuts the sidewalk. It places 10 feet plus, so not a very comfortable walking experience for anybody over there, as well as little vegetation along the sidewalk, and so we're aiming to kind of relieve that as we propose our project. Working with the city, we will also provide on-street parallel parking on Arcadia, as well as a 5-foot grassy boulevard, 5-foot sidewalks, and additional green space buffer so that we really help enhance the pedestrian experience, like I mentioned. Siting the building, we pushed it closest to the northeast corner to try to provide as much setback and green space to the west and the south. And as Carrie mentioned, we would be proposing a PUD, and in that proposal we would ask for relief on heights, setbacks, and site coverage. We are within the comp plan density range at 100 units per acre. So with that, I will open it up to you, and we're here to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Grothe. I'm going to start this sketch plan review, I think, with Member Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I started with our former Planning Commission chair last time, as I remember, so I give her a break this time.
So I'll tell you, the first thing that jumps out at me is that 4-foot setback along Arcadia. This is a neighborhood when the Avador is really close to the street, and I'm concerned that it's going to feel really crowded really quickly. I wasn't on the council at the time, I would not have allowed that close a setback. And I'm looking at, so I'll just say that it was a real concern for me. I know it's a tight spot. The setback so that goes from 4 feet there, and then as you go south along that thing, what is the setback from the curb to the very southwest corner of the building there? What would the distance be there?
From the curb?
Well, wherever it's measured from. I think it's from the curb, isn't it, that it's measured?
Setbacks are measured from the property line, yeah. The red line.
Okay.
Yeah. Eden Avenue does have a pretty wide right-of-way, and so we felt a little bit more comfortable pushing up close to the property line, because then like you mentioned, the distance to the curb is still pretty great at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, that's the first thing that jumps out at me. When you're saying 7 stories, approximately how many feet would that be?
Approximately 75.
About 75 feet. Now, so I'm sure the staff's been talking with you, but we've been trying to keep the Jerry's Tower, the limit on the area. Is that within that range?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. This is a big building on a small lot, and I know it's got to be to a certain size to make it profitable, but it does feel, in just the pictures that we've looked at, pretty dense. And I know in the Planning Commission, you guys talked about wanting to be a green building and that Opus has a real commitment to that. Could you talk a little bit about what that would mean?
Sure. So one thing for sure that we would do is provide EV stalls in the project. And I think that's just kind of a no-brainer for us. We use high-efficiency mechanical equipment and robust construction to make sure that our building is as tight and efficient as possible. So I think those things are definitely something that would be included in this project.
And I would just add, we also, on a recent project, looked at adding a solar element as well. So in a project in St. Louis Park that we're currently under construction on, we were able to add a solar array in an area that helped with some of the power for some of the common areas. Also a sustainable stormwater management system that doesn't exist there today. So we'd be dealing with stormwater in a more sustainable way. So it is a core value at Opus, sustainability. So we would have that not only in the project specifically, but within our construction practices as well.
Okay, thank you. When I'm looking at the pictures, and I'm kind of toggling back and forth between the staff report and your report, you've got the balconies. Are those cement that comes out, or are they clipped on? Because I think I'm thinking about the wicking of the balconies to bring the heat in the summer and out in the winter.
They would be clipped on the outside, yes.
Okay, excellent. All right, so those are my feelings. I mean, like I said, it's a small lot and it's a difficult thing, but it feels really big, and especially that tight corner where it's a 4 foot. So,
okay.
But anyways, thank you so much for coming
Thank you
forward.
for the comments.
All right, Member Risser, your thoughts, please.
Do you have an overall view in this, I can't remember, of the Grandview area plan, I think?
Yeah, there's a few.
There we go. Yeah. All right. I watched the Planning Commission. I heard the disappointment from some, and particularly Chair Bennett, and I did go look at image 18 that he talked about. And when I look at this picture here, can you go back to where we were?
Sorry, yeah.
You can see that the whole idea is to have these row houses along Arcadia. And the thing is, Arcadia does not need to be activated. It is already over-activated. And I think, I really appreciate all of the work that you've put into this. But if you look at the Grandview area plan and you see all the lists, all the people from Edina who spent so much time on this, and a lot of staff time on this, and I look at how they intentionally had an open area between the row houses or the townhouses, and then the other block that would have been higher and more dense, and that was purposeful. And this is the first block that would lead up along the north, and so there's the vision, which is a beautiful long-term vision, okay, would ultimately produce this open area that would go all the way from Eden up to Vernon. And then the other thing is that there's enough space along the edge with Highway 100 and that ramp so that you could create a street that goes along and joins those two as well. And I know I want to really give a shout out to Director Milner for getting back to me and saying that there's a possibility that even if this massive setback went forward, we could still create that. But here's the thing, and I walked this site before the meeting, we have this parcel right now. There is this expected setback. And I think, why would we let go of that to risk, maybe it'll work out, maybe it won't. So that is a concern that I've got. I have a lot of concerns, and some of them, this is, in a way, this is really good because we're at the sketch plan phase. I am really concerned about how we calculate the number of units that are allowed, and to have this straight, well, it's 1.38 acres, maybe it's 1.36. I thought I heard that when I listened to planning. So we're counting every single square inch of this lot, and we're not talking about buildable area. And I think there's, some reason, I turn to our attorney since this is early on in the process, but you're asking for a PUD, and under section 36-254, applicability and criteria, number 4, the setback regulation, building coverage and floor area ratio of the most closely related conventional zoning district shall be considered presumptively appropriate. And now here's where things get really interesting. What is the most closely related conventional zoning district? And here in the future land use plan, this is supposed to be, what is it, MXC, which is not a zoning code that's in our ordinance yet. It is not codified. So is it MDD? And there would be setbacks. So this is a lot, and I kind of turn to Attorney Kendall because we're at the very beginning of this process, and I'm not looking for an answer, but I think we need to figure out, is it really appropriate to say that you can count every single speck of land on this and use that to calculate the number of units that you can build? And I did ask what the buildable area would be if it were under the MDD, and then it would be 0.61 or 0.62, which would be like 62 units. And when I think of 62 units and I look at the vision in the Grandview District Plan, it seems like that would be very viable. So I know I'm bringing up a lot, but those are things I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about saying I'm okay with the setback that is so extreme along a trunk highway entrance ramp without input from MnDOT. And I understand that you've reached out to MnDOT, but it feels like, I hope we're not going to rush this, and we should hear from MnDOT before any firm proposal moves forward, because they may not be okay with this. I don't know if you want to respond to that, but this is the vision, the hope, the dream. And when you say that you're following it and looking at it, I'm not seeing that.
Sure. No, thank you for the comments. Appreciate it. I'll try to touch on a few of those. In regards to MnDOT, we have been in conversations as well as with Director Milner and Director Teague as far as is there an ability to, again, think about that on-ramp, or rather off-ramp to the north not being there and bringing the pedestrian bridge across Highway 100. That's something we certainly would love to keep talking about and would think would be great for the area as well as the project. MnDOT has not expressed any concerns, to my knowledge, I don't want to speak out of turn, but have not expressed any concerns with our building setback on the north. In regards to the plan, I completely understand where you're coming from. We did design in a way that would allow, to the best of our knowledge, the frontage road to the east of the building. That is something that we've discussed, and we feel it will fit there. The plan as shown, certainly understand it. It's a vision. We looked at what we could do on the site. Splitting it up like that with the size of this site with the acreage is, I believe, 1.36. We think that the 0.2 was taken away as part of the roundabout that was built. Simply doesn't work. We don't have the circulation on site. Safety is an issue. We would have buildings that were too close together. We wouldn't be able to have proper circulation and parking. Parking is really one of the largest drivers here, but at the end of the day, for it to be economically viable, we do need to have density at the highest level that we're at today. So certainly appreciate the comments, and we will continue to go back to the drawing board and look at setbacks, look at how we can improve the building, and certainly these are the comments that we were hoping to get from sketch plan review so that we can improve the plans. But the row homes also is something that we just simply, it's just not market today. We're trying to meet the market where it is today, and a for sale product on the site is not something that we're interested in.
Okay, can you, it's hard because this keeps happening where we have community come together with a vision, and then instead of a project that reflects that, it's very different. But could we move to where you can where you're showing the sidewalks and the boulevard?
Yep.
I think it was 17. There we go.
Yeah.
All right. I know the current retaining wall is not that inspiring, but when I walked that sidewalk today, and I did it the other day, I loved how wide it was. And this is a really busy area. And Director Milner, how wide is that sidewalk? It's a beautiful sidewalk. It's like, I mean, I paced it off and I was like 9 of my shoes going across the width of it.
It should be a standard 5-foot wide sidewalk.
It's wider than that, though.
Maybe right at the
At the corner, it's wide. It's really
ramp.
wide, and it's not just at the corner. It's lovely. It's like 3 people could walk on that sidewalk next to each other. And so when I see it shrunk down here to this tiny bit, you know, and looking like we're going to get a standard 5-foot sidewalk, that's kind of heartbreaking because what we have right there right now, I love it. And the thing is that in this area, the sidewalk is not just a sidewalk for pedestrians. It's not just a pathway for pedestrians. It's also for bikers. You know, so it's pretty wide. So there's that. And you know, one thing I was wondering is there any way? You know, MnDOT is saying maybe they'll get rid of the frontage road that goes to the north. Is there any way something could be done so that you've got parking coming in from the north along that edge instead of, you know, along Arcadia? And I don't know.
Well, from what I understand, again, city-owned MnDOT easement on that land, so I don't believe that it would probably work to access parking there. And certainly with the sidewalks, I do want to say this is preliminary, so we are certainly open to, if there was a desire for less landscaping and wider sidewalks, we could certainly look at that as well. So always open to those comments as well.
The other thing is your northern driveway, which I think reflects where the extant driveway is. I think it's going to be directly across from the driveway that's going to go to Grandview Yard.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. There's a lot going on Arcadia already, and I really do think that this is too big a project, and I really would like more feedback on whether or not that 100 and, you know, like up to 108 units for the entire site, if that truly is accurate, because as I'm looking at the code, I'm thinking that it may not be. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Risser. Member Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So a couple of questions to follow up on Member Jackson. What is the height of the Avador?
Maybe without the heights, the Avador, the co-op across the street, as well
and that was
as
my next question.
as well as Basin Green are all 7 stories.
7 stories.
Which is the same as this proposal.
And this proposal is 75 feet? Is that what we said?
Yes, which is 7 stories.
7 stories, yeah.
Okay.
And we can...
We did have the graphic with the height of each one. I don't know that we have it in the package, but...
And we can update you with that, but we have studied all of those buildings in relationship to ours, and we are right there or below.
Okay. That actually would be good to see if you have a graphic of that. And so where I'm going is it's kind of tough to visualize that space because there is a lot proposed there. And so as best as we can kind of get a sense of what it would be like. And I would probably go from Vernon all the way through the Grandview Yard to your proposed building and have that total view.
Sure.
With the height and the density on there.
Sure. And I think, not to cut you off, but one thing that we are excited about is that we have, as Dale mentioned, the boulevard along Arcadia, which to our understanding the senior co-op has as well. So there'd be some symmetry there with parallel parking on both sides, green space, and wider sidewalks.
Yeah, okay. So that's one. Then the other one, another question I think we covered. So the off-ramp, we had talked about potentially that, I think we had talked about that off-ramp going away and that whole little area being redesigned, not as a project, but is that when you're talking to MnDOT, is that what we're trying to get clarification on there? Or is that something different? Yeah.
Well, I can maybe there's three pieces. So there's if you look at this graphic, there's the on-ramp to southbound 100 right off the bottom of this graphic.
Yep.
Where it merges, and that's like our highest crash area in the city.
Yep.
So that we're closing in 2026. Then there's the frontage road idea from the Grandview framework. That's on the right-hand side of this graphic. That if MnDOT ever replaces that Eden Avenue Bridge, we could create a frontage road. And then there's the off-ramp on the north side that's still up for discussion with MnDOT. And if we can prove the traffic operations aren't needed, they'd be open to discussions of that going away. But they definitely don't want to impact the main line 100.
Got it. Okay. Thank you for that. I think those are my primary questions. And then just comments. I think it's a great location for it. So I do think about the walkability, the services that are there, access to transportation, right? So those kinds of themes, I think, feel good about that space. I do think it's too large, and so it's just too large for that in that space. And then if you have one slide that has an overview of right there. Go back one more. Back that slide. So when I look at this, that's where I'm saying to you to try to visualize what's happening there. That feels like a lot on that lot where this proposed site is, to say nothing about the height. And so I do appreciate pushing the height towards 100. That's smart to do that. But it does seem like a lot. And so when Member Risser says there's a lot of activation on Acadia, I don't know that I necessarily agree with that. To say that's kind of a judgment, right? Whether it's a lot. But if it's the kind of activity that we want, then I'm okay with it. And so when I think about that area, I think of a lot of pedestrian traffic. And I think of it, the idea behind the entire Grandview yard was to have this open kind of green space. And I think having a building that is this size on that side of Acadia, I have concerns about that impacting the openness, the feel, especially if it's too close to the sidewalk. So I do think it's just too large for the space. I'm not quite sure how you would enable more activation where the building currently is. I think you would, the way I think about it, it'd be less activation just because of the nature of what the setback would be. It's just how I envision that. And so again, I do think it's too large. And then the last comment, to go back to the earlier point about being able to envision it, I almost think I think you're too early to. It's just my opinion. But I would rather see a little bit more development of the Grandview yard so that I get a sense of what that's going to feel like. I'd rather have a little bit better feel for what the proposed senior co-op is going to be in that space to be able to make a call on what would happen on the other side. And without any of that in place, it's kind of hard for me to just envision what it would be like to add a building of this size right there on that corner. So that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Councilmember Agnew.
Thank you, and thank you for not encouraging me to go first this time. Just to kind of echo some of my fellow members' comments, I agree kind of with some of the setbacks. So pull back more from Arcadia. I think that's going to be really important. And I think what I'm missing collectively is like the character of the site. And granted, like some of the visuals were just, white squares, and I really appreciated having some of those visuals where you showed the inspirational imagery, but it still feels like just a very large apartment building. And so the things that I'm looking for, right, are the townhouses or the row houses or even something like a coffee shop, which I know Starbucks is just right there too, but just like where is just a little bit more character, where you're going to have people that are just across the street in the yard and want to kind of go and back and forth engagement. And it doesn't have to be complete activation because that is right across the street, but making it feel more a part of the community rather than just a mass of housing for that site specific. And then I also think, and this was obviously talked about in the Planning Commission meeting, but sustainability is really important. So continuing to use the guide that the city has, that's definitely more than, EV charging and solar panels, but really thinking holistically about what is this development. And, one of those things that always comes up is, and you mentioned this, right, that parking is such a large driver here, but thinking about how you are decoupling parking from the units of the apartment, which is just one lever that you have to kind of decrease the number of parking stalls you have to provide. But for such a centrally located area like this that has better options for transportation, it has kind of more of that walkability, you're going to find a lot of even couples are going to be fine with one vehicle. So it helps in reducing the cost of home ownership, and it also helps subsequently create that sustainability impact by decreasing ridership overall. So those are just a couple of the things that pop into my mind. Continue leaning on the guide that we have for that site, because that is what my mind is now rooted in, and I think that that's something that you're going to have to see with other members of the council as well, as really rooted in already what was a part of that guide. So, thank you.
Thank you for the comments.
Thank you.
Just one quick comment, a balance, and we certainly agree. The character of the building is not there today. It's blocking, we wanted to show it, but a balance of, we didn't want to over-design without hearing feedback, but we also look forward to, and I won't speak for Theo, but he really looks forward to putting some character and some design into the building, so thank you.
This site really flummoxes me. This is a great slide right here that Member Pierce asked you to put up, because it shows you the oddball shape of the piece of property, its proximity to the bridge, its proximity to Highway 100, and the off ramp and the on ramp. I'm not concerned about we would get to the point where we would help you define the character. I think we can get there on that issue. I'm looking at your building in the distance here on slide 12. The office building that you built years ago is really, really high quality, and we know you did a great job out at the Loden. So some of those, materials, design issues, to me, those would be ahead of us if we thought this was a good idea. And I think my colleagues have done a good job kind of expressing the notion that it feels a little bit like when you look at that site plan, which may be the next slide, one way or the other. Yeah, it's got that uncomfortable feeling of 10 pounds of sugar in a 5-pound bag. And it's, we understand what you need to do to make it, what the market is going to be able to deliver and what it requires. And we know there's more housing required for the Twin Cities, and you're responsive to that. But I guess what I would say is that on this site, I would actually be more comfortable with more height. So you make the building skinnier and taller, and you get more green space and more setback around it. This notion that surfaced in 2012, which I remember well because these drawings everybody fell in love with, these row houses. If you go back to 12 again, the problem with the row houses is they don't work. I mean, it assumes that there's no restaurant, that there's no Washburn-McCreevy funeral home. This was all daydreamy stuff in a perfect world. And with today's pricing of land, I understand what your concerns are: material costs, land, labor, lumber, and so you're trying to figure out what to do on this site. So for me personally, this 1.3 acre, 8 acre site poses difficulties no matter what the zoning is. I mean, the PUD doesn't really seem to me to work very well here because the site is so small that you can't. But historically, what we've done with PUD is you get to use PUD, Mr. Developer, if you give us something in return. It's a give to get. You get to use PUD and have variance from the code in terms of setback and height and density and all these other things, depending on what you give us from a public standpoint. And I can't see what you can give us from a public standpoint with what you've got on that site, because you're trying to maximize what you're trying to do there from a market standpoint and from a return on investment standpoint. It's really complicated, I think, on that. And then when I look at the existing zoning, and people are talking about the street's already busy enough the way it is. Well, here, okay, what's there could be there again. Office. I like that idea. I've always liked that idea. Here's my kind of dream threesome here is office or medical office or corporate headquarters. That's what I thought would be the best on that site. But you've come with housing. Probably gives the owner the maximum return on her investment. If I look at that zoning code, it says you can do business in professional office, financial institutions, post offices, clubs, lodge halls, facilities for athletic, health, or weight control purposes, medical and dental offices and clinics, employment agencies, travel bureaus, daycare, public and private colleges, universities, or schools, and breweries, tap rooms, and wineries, distilleries, etc. And if it was POD too. Well, I mean, with all the concern there is about office now, I could see why you're not, even though you built that beautiful office building a few blocks away several years ago, over a decade ago now, I can see why you don't think about office right now. You hear these stories about what the vacancy rate's going to be downtown Minneapolis, so it's just not something that you want to, they try to entice people, build something on spec and try to get people to move down into the suburbs. You hear that that's what they're going to do because they don't want to be downtown Minneapolis, but nobody's sure about that. So you go with what the market will deliver in its housing, and if we think about housing on that site, which again, it wouldn't be my preferred use, but if we have to think about that, and we have to think about PUD and what you could give to get, it seems to me like you could find something to give if we gave you PUD if you were taller and skinnier and there was more space around there. to me, you're sitting right on Highway 100. I mean, I don't really see why anybody would want to live right on Highway 100, but because you're on Highway 100, to me, it would warrant more height so that you don't have such a broad footprint at the base of the building and you're not occupying all the space and you don't have these things that some of my colleagues are worried about, and I do too, 4 to 15 feet of setback. It just isn't going to work. I don't think the planning commissioner or the council would tell you that's okay. And it would just look like this behemoth hanging over the corner. So I don't really know what to tell you. That piece of property is really interesting and intriguing, and it with the right thing on that oddball piece of property, it could be really a nice fit in the neighborhood. People have made interesting observations about what's coming across the street. I think you can design something that fits in well with what's coming across the street, but I'm still kind of flummoxed on what kind of good advice to give you, and I don't feel like I've done a very good job of that. I want to ask Director Teague a question. You know, in your planning, in your memo, you say a rezoning is rezoning from POD 1 to PUD. It obviously gives us flexibility in the underlying POD standards, including building height, setbacks on all sides, floor ratio, and building coverage. And you said it was also the basis for getting to affordable housing. But my question would be, is that good enough? I see the way I wanted to phrase my question. If we didn't use PUD and there was going to be housing, wouldn't they still be subject to the affordable housing policy? I guess that's a better way to put it. Like, remember, Risser mentioned MDD and MDX.
Here's the complicated thing, because in the future land use plan, it is zoned MXC, is that it, or MCX? And that is not a zoning code. It's not in our code. It's just in our comp plan. And so it's very complicated to try to figure out what parameters should be put in place here. And so I thought it would have been mixed use development district, the closest one to it, given the concept that's being presented. But I really, because so much of Grandview is identified that way, I think we really need to work out what exactly is allowable in terms of residential units. And I think the argument could be made that it's not this figure, that it's about half of it. But I think setbacks, to the mayor's point, you know, we can't just keep giving really big setbacks.
I looked at the, member Pierce, do you want to go ahead?
Well, I was just going to ask kind of a point of order question. We're in a sketch review. I'm not sure what we're trying to accomplish going into zone. Yeah.
Well, in a sense we are, a little bit, I think.
Well, the sketch plan is assuming that it's okay to put 138 units. So, and I'm not sure, which is a way.
You're not sure you're comfortable with that?
No, and I'm not sure that's accurate.
And I'm not challenging that. I'm sure that they have that sense from this. That's all I was saying. And so taking the conversation about figuring out for that piece of land how we're going to figure out how to zone that to get to something that we want to see there. We need to have that conversation,
Right, I've got flexibility in my mind around that issue. But it's got to work for the district. And even when I look at the Grandview 7 guiding principles that were put together so many years ago, I see some that are not applicable to what you're trying to do. I see some where you've made good arguments about how you comply with those principles. Some I question whether they still even reflect what we've determined we're going to do across the street. And some, as I said, I think on the majority of these, you've, at least to my satisfaction, you've answered or made a representation that aligns with some of these principles, at least the majority of them. And then, as I said, some don't even apply. So coupling that kind of conundrum with, other design principles we can follow, well, kind of, some of them maybe, and coupled with, does PUD really work here in this situation? I mean, we designed PUD for that give to get notion, but you could end up with a piece of property where PUD was the logical default zoning that you wanted to use, but it doesn't work. And I feel like this is one of those situations where we're just going to have to figure it out. But what you should be going away here thinking is that everybody thinks you got too much, the footprint is too big. And so you might think about, I don't know how my colleagues feel about more height over there. I mean, to me, as I told you, height along Highway 100, to me, it's not totally irrelevant, but and Jerry's is at a different elevation, and it's 7 stories. But for me personally, if you were a little taller than Jerry's office building, and you're right on Highway 100, that'd be okay with me if you captured a lot of green space around there, and we could do some of those things that are important for pedestrians to be able to do, and to have an environment where you don't feel like the buildings, you're underneath the big canopy of a huge overhanging monolithic thing. So those are kind of my general comments.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and you answered the question I was going to ask, is the height, and something we definitely would love to explore if there is flexibility, if we do end up taller than the Jerry's building, recognizing it's at a different elevation, but just was curious if there were any other comments in relation to that, so I appreciate the comments.
For me, taller and skinnier has always been better than shorter and wider, because you capture more green space and you have more flexibility in what you can do in terms of the pedestrian environment. So, Member Risser has a comment. And
also, it does show that we're supposed to have bike trails along Arcadia and Eden, and so that is important to recognize. We don't often talk about that.
Yeah, great comment. Thank you.
Member Jackson.
So to sort of take off what you said, Mr. Mayor, and what Member Agnew said, if we were to go taller, would that give you more flexibility to get that really sort of sense of home, sense of creativity, sense of place? Because this is not, it's so blocky and big. And if we could do that to sort of create a sense of place, which is what we tried to do across the street, right? We have that green that goes from the top of the co-op all the way up to the bridge, so your eye follows along a green space, even though there are buildings there. Something like that gives you a sense of this, I'm in a place I really want to be, as opposed to, well, it's an apartment, I got to live somewhere, right? So does that give you a lot more flexibility if we give you some height?
Yeah, I think so. I look at the slide that we have pulled up. Is this the first floor? And we heard the comments from the Planning Commission, and now we're hearing your comments as well. And we're already thinking about, how does that courtyard become larger, and maybe there is a public space there that opens up kind of to the park across the street. The challenges we had before tonight was we would lose quite a bit of density every time we did that, and all of a sudden, we're pulling some setbacks and we're losing that density, and now economically it doesn't work. If we're able to look at possibly a height, we'll have to look at a concrete or steel structure versus a wood frame building, but it certainly is going to allow us more space, more green spaces, as Mr. Mayor mentioned, where maybe there's a better, more public park, if you will. And we're still exploring retail, just to throw that out there as well. We would love to have some retail. Parking is our challenge. Is the parking ramp, the Grandview ramp, close enough? Maybe, in the winter. Maybe not. We don't want a situation where the streets are filled. I happen to live 10 doors down for the Lorient, so I was part of that neighborhood that had the issue with parking there. So I recognize that's a real challenge, but we would love to have some commercial space on the first floor. So could we have an opportunity to have commercial space, a little more green space, pull back the setbacks and get a little more height? I certainly like the idea, and I'm sure Theo always likes more height.
Love it.
So. Yeah.
If you decide you want to look at a little bit more height, go look at those Southdale Design Experience Guidelines, and they'll tell you that the first 65 feet that's the important environment for a pedestrian. That's what you feel and see and kind of capture as you're moving around. And So, okay, I hope we provided some guidance for you here.
Yes, very helpful comments. Thank you
for
all very
everything.
much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Oh, yes, we have item C. My quick trip to Denver, that travel we got to talk about. So I don't know if you want me to lead off on that, Manager Neal, or you want to talk about policy or how we want to do
Sure, I can lead off on this. Our normal course of business for elected officials and out-of-state travel is we have really usually a pretty long lead-up time when we know you're going to travel out of state. We have to make an estimate of what your travel is going to be to kind of input it into our system. We bring that estimate to the council per the policy, and the council has the option to approve that travel. We do not have a similar expectation of council pre-authorization for in-state travel. That only goes with out-of-state travel. Sometimes, and I was just thinking of how often we do this, maybe once every other year or so, we have a situation where the travel comes up quickly. We weren't expecting it. Our council meetings calendar turned out strange, and we didn't have a chance to get a pre-authorization. So we do this from time to time. We ask for a retroactive approval, and that's what this one is tonight. And so I think, Mr. Mayor, I'll turn it back over to you to talk about the kind of the details of this particular case. But that's how our policy works when it's in play.
Yeah, thank you. My apologies. In a perfect world, it would have unfolded differently. I did know about this Summit of the Americas, Cities Summit of the Americas, Cities of the Americas Summit, I guess is the proper term, in January, because I was down at the U.S. Conference of Mayors leadership meeting, and a guy from the State Department got a hold of me, and he said, "Hey, Jim, you need to be thinking about maybe you coming down to the Cities of the Americas Summit in Denver," but certainly he was working on the Expo. You know, there's 5 finalists in the world for this Expo for 2027, and Bloomington is one of them. Minnesota's one. If it comes to the United States, it's coming to Minnesota, it's coming to our next door neighbor, Bloomington, and it's a $2.4 billion economic impact if it comes. So he said, why don't you see if you should tell Bloomington they need to come down. So I got Bloomington connected with the State Department people. They said they would go down. I said I'd like to go down, and I was kind of encouraged to go down, but my schedule didn't look so great. And the day after the city council meeting, things kind of fell into place. That was on the 18th of April, and this thing was the 26th, 27th. And so I thought 2 reasons worth going. First of all, it was the first summit of its type, bringing together mayors from South America, North America, Central America, and the Caribbean. The State Department has a new emphasis, the U.S. State Department, on cities forward. And I thought it would be really wonderful to be part of this and be part of the U.S. Conference of Mayors team that was going there. And it did prove out to be really valuable that way. And when we get to our conversations about what's going on, I'll tell you more about my experience in those couple of days, which was really quite phenomenal. But then I also thought, well, I could help Bloomington, our next door neighbor, with the Expo. So I did end up going out there with them on a Wednesday and helped them set up, and you got the booth. We got the booth all set up, and then that night they had a reception at the Denver Art Museum, and I think in the first hour I met mayors from Mexico, Peru, Colombia, Belize, Guyana. I mean, it was just sort of this endless conversation about different things, and then you got to throw in, oh, by the way, you know, and the reason the State Department thought Bloomington should be there is because there are voters all over the world that are going to vote in Paris on June 21st. And they said you could be down there to either influence people that might be voters or that know voters in their countries. And so I thought, yeah, I'll go and help. And so I went down there for a couple of days, but I had to get back here for that thing for Pacey Irk on Friday afternoon. So I had to cut it short a little bit, but it was really a pretty phenomenal experience, and to be able to help a neighbor was a great thing too. I don't think my expenses came to $1,500, but I think probably a little over $1,000 is what the expenses came to. So I hate to come after the fact and ask, but it also, just thinking about this also caused me to recall I had never told you that you had approved. I don't think Julie was here then, but you had approved an expense for me to go down to that meeting in Chicago put on by the Chinese American Chamber of Commerce and the U.S. China Heartland Association. You had authorized some expenditures there. Well, I never had to use that because the Chinese American Chamber of Commerce in Chicago ended up paying those expenses. So that was a good thing. And so while you don't like to, you want to make sure that you're prudent with taxpayer money. I'm giving up time, but the taxpayers are contributing to the trip. Where I would otherwise be working, but I thought it was important for our town, important for our neighbor, and important for our council to be able to have this experience, and it ended up being quite a good one. So that's kind of my side of what happened.
And there's been chatter on Nextdoor, and there's also, I've received emails about this, all of us received emails about this, and I think we have protocol in place if somebody doesn't ask for reimbursement up front. There is number 10, I think, where it is fine to do that, and I think it's good to just have clarity on this. I also want to say I am somebody who is now pulling back and not really wanting to travel that much, and so I think it's, wonderful when we can have people go out and make connections and do that. I'm trying to figure out, because it seems one concern that we get from the public is travel, and I don't know if it would, and this is for a different time maybe, but would it be good to have a kind of set budget or something? I have no idea what our budget is for travel, or if we're going to get to the end of the year and there isn't going to be money, and we might want to go someplace, but there seems to be a little ambiguity, and I don't know if that's playing into all of this. But I think it seems to be an issue that keeps coming up, and I don't really know.
Yeah, you raise an interesting point. I think there are some cities that actually allocate a certain amount of money for travel, and then you don't have to be coming back in before the fact, after the fact. It's just, we got this much money to work with, and we're going to allocate it until it's gone, and then when it's gone, it's gone.
Right, and that could make it possible to plan for the whole year instead of like these case by case.
Or do something after the fact, or do something like what happened here, and then not worry about it because we got a budget for it.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good thought. So
motion to, well.
Yeah, I need a motion.
So motion to approve item, I can't remember what item it was.
Let me find it here. L, I think it is.
Yeah, 6L.
6L.
Item 6L.
Okay, we moved it.
Thank
That's
you
right.
for that.
Sorry.
Motion to approve item 9. There's a motion by Member Risser to approve item 9C. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Member Agnew. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of the motion to approve those expenses as set forth in item 9C, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, now we are at commission correspondence. I don't think anything's come in while we've been meeting, and we'll go to manager's comments.
I do not have any comments for tonight, sir.
Oh. Member Risser.
I would just like to announce that tomorrow, May 3rd, has been designated, Governor Tim Walz has proclaimed May 3rd as Walk and Bike to School Day in Minnesota, which is wonderful. And in the announcement, it was noted how we are now understanding, we have known for a long time, but local leaders know firsthand the benefits of walkable and bikeable communities. Studies have shown that regular physical activities such as biking and walking can lead to improved physical health, mental health, and academic performance in children. So that's all good, and I think tomorrow would be kind of fun to get out there. I'm going to walk the dogs early and walk the walk around schools and just see people walking and biking. Thank you.
Good. Member Jackson.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We got a communication from the Human Rights and Relations Commission on pursuing a naming policy, which I think is a grand report, and I'm trying to figure out what the next steps are in their report, but I'd like to see a policy put together on how we do name public spots. And like I said, I'm trying to jump ahead here to what the next steps are, but I'd really like to see that move forward.
Okay. Next steps would be to bring it to the council for consideration.
Yes, please.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's important work. I'm sure other people will talk about it, but the Pacey Irk dedication of the clock was magnificent. What a generous person, both in heart and in her pocketbook. And it was cold, windy day, but boy, everybody was smiling. And it was just a happy occasion and a reminder of how many really special people we get to know in our city. So that's my comments. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. Member Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of things. One, we have the Days of Remembrance on the 7th of May. So definitely, I'm sure that's on the website. And so if you need details, but it'll be here. And does it start at 2?
Yes.
Yeah, it starts at 2. So definitely make plans if it works for you Sunday to be here for that. And then thanks for those who came out to Give and Go, the Give and Go event last week. Their target was to raise $50,000, and I think so I'm not on the board, raised $52,000. So that was good. And I think the neat thing there is organizations are starting to get smarter about how to be able to raise funds, especially in this market. And Edina Give and Go had never done corporate sponsorships before. And so this time around with their new director, I believe they had $11,000 in corporate sponsorship as well. So I thought that was definitely huge. And then the last thing, I said I was not going to do this, but today is my wife's birthday. So happy birthday, Steph. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Member Agnew.
Thank you. So since we all have, I think, fun events that have either just passed or coming up, I also want to announce Vehicle Day, which is this Saturday. I took my girls last year, so it's at Southdale Center, and you literally get to let your kids go on the school bus, which that was a really fun way to say, in a couple years you'll get to go to school, you'll ride the school bus. And my daughter went crazy over the fire trucks and the snowplow. So that's this Saturday at 10 a.m. to noon, and that's in the Southdale parking lot. So I'm geared up for that. You'll see me there if you come out, venture out. But I think that's it for me this week.
Good. Thank you. Well, most of us were able to be there. Our schedules permitted being there for Pacey Irk and the dedication of that beautiful clock. And I think Carolyn said it so well. Just a totally gracious person and generous. Loves her town as much as somebody could love a place that they grew up and live in. It's incredible. Really, and I saw her sitting here tonight with Crime Fund folks And she just loves Edina, and Edina loves her back. The Cities of the Americas Summit started out, I mentioned the U.S. State Department they've decided that they wanted to start this program I'll call it program Cities Forward. And it's, the notion that cities are the places where experiments in democracy occur. Cities are the first places where action is being taken to stop global warming. And that cities are, at the end of the day, kind of the bulwark of democracy. And so they're making an investment in the Western Hemisphere with time and I think with money to bring these mayors together and bring cities together to talk about these common issues that they've got. And so there were some interesting speakers. The mayor of Montevideo, Uruguay, was one of the keynote speakers. Our own Francis Suarez, Miami mayor, who's the current chair of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, spoke as well. And then there were great panels. Elizabeth Couts from Burnsville, longtime mayor down there, was on a panel on smart cities. I don't know if we've got this or not. It was a little tidbit that came up on the technology aspect of smart cities, and it was that there's a app that you can have in your city where somebody it's pothole season. You can go around, you can take a picture of a pothole if you got the app on your camera. It sends the information to the engineering department, and it tells you exactly where that pothole is. And so I don't know if we have that or not.
Yep, Edina 311.
That's the one we use?
Yep, get it out there.
I knew that we had a way of
311.
identifying them, but I just wasn't sure that was. So we're right there with the technology, smart cities technology. And this whole smart cities concept is one that we're going to have to embrace in this century. Mississauga, Ontario is doing what they call their first net zero fire station. The first one in Ontario. It made me think, hey, wait a minute, what do we need to do to create the first net zero fire station in the state of Minnesota, or maybe the United States? I don't know, but let's look at that as we're going through this process. And then Linda Thomas Greenfield, the U.S. ambassador to the UN, was there talking about how cities are at the core of addressing the needs of people, and that was why she was there. I had to leave earlier Friday to get back for that thing for Pacey, but I know Secretary Blinken was there on Friday as well. Other meetings that I participated in, I talked about the smart cities. I was in an infrastructure financing and procurement meeting that the State Department put on. There were mayors there from Brazil and then also from the U.S. and then some development bankers. And then a fellow walked in and sat next to me, and I turned to look at him, and he nodded at me and stuck out his hand and handed me his card. And he was a mayor from the Ukraine. And he just made me think about the Ukraine. So his name, I got his card. Yuri Zbova, mayor of the city of Trostianets, Ukraine. His city doesn't even exist anymore. 60 miles from the Russian border, everything's been destroyed. And he was there, I think, to visit with some of those development makers that were present, and wondering and musing and meeting with the State Department to find out, well, how are we going to reconstruct this country, assuming they can win the war? But it made me think about the challenges that we face as a city, as a country, and the challenges that they're facing. It's really, really monumental. So a lot of other good experiences. And I won't belabor it further. Trade and development people were there as well from the U.S., and they were fascinating people as well. So I think we built some good relationships for Edina, and they'll be advantageous to us in the long run to learn some good things, and there's more to learn in the future. And now we've got some good relationships with the State Department, and as they start this Cities Forward program, we might be eligible for some things there as well. So all in all, I think time well spent. And thanks to the taxpayers and this council for letting me be there. That's it for me. Anybody else have anything?
I have one question.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So we did receive several emails about the retreat being recorded, and I just didn't want to assume. So that was one thing maybe we should follow up on.
So we are not prepared to record in terms of, particularly in video. We don't have a legal obligation to record. We haven't recorded this annual retreat in previous years. There are no decisions being made, so there's not a decision record that comes out of this. So that's my response to that. In terms of what's possible is we could record from an audio only standpoint. It won't be very good, given the kind of the size of the room and how people are going to be sitting, but that's technically possible.
It is an open meeting, not a public. It's a public meeting, but not a public hearing, obviously. But so the public can attend,
right?
Because it's a public meeting. But some folks, of course, would like it recorded. Any thoughts on that issue of recording? Member Risser?
I can't think of any reason not to record, and we have to take notes, don't we? I mean, there has to be some record. If there was a recording, it'd be easier to go back. Does anyone have concerns about recording?
No, not really.
Yeah, no concerns regarding recording.
So do you want to arrange for recording? Okay. I forgot one thing. This was an article.
Our clerk has it.
Oh.
We do plan to record the meeting, and audio recording will be done.
Okay. Thank you, Clerk Allison. I had pulled this from the paper where this family of Edina, the pediatrician that was killed in an I-35W crash, that asked for merciful treatment of the driver responsible for killing Dr. Michael Ray Bendel Stenzel. And I think the rest of the family, or at least the folks that were in the car, were all injured, but he was killed. And the family showed some real gracious, merciful sort of attitude towards the person that caused the accident that led to the death of Dr. Stenzel. I thought it was really pretty remarkable by the family. So thanks for living in Edina, Bendel Stenzel family. We appreciate you being here, and we're sorry for the loss of Dr. Bendel Stenzel. Thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Got a motion by Member Jackson, second by Member Pierce to adjourn the City Council meeting of May 2nd, 2023, 10:08. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adjourning say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.